Hey guys, it's Crazy Comic Lady. So it's been a while since I put out any YouTube videos. So I'd quite like to share with you guys a bit about what's been happening in my life for the last few years. So we're going to be doing a bit of diamond painting, and we're actually working on I Am Light from JoJo's art. This was a kit that I managed to get in a D-Stash group, because I do love JoJo art. His art is awesome. So yeah, so to anyone who's brand new to this channel, hello, welcome. My name's actually Steph, and I'd quite like to share with you guys about my parents' journeys with Alzheimer's, and I would quite like to specifically talk about carer burnout, because I've been my parents' primary carer now for going on around 6 years. So I'd quite like to kind of take you back to the beginning of our journey with my father's diagnosis and then my mother's. Some of you who've been around before on my channel will know bits and bobs already. I think the very first Whip and Chat I ever recorded actually had my dad actually made a cameo guest appearance actually in that video, and then I think it was possibly the second one I made, my mum actually made an appearance in it as well. So kind of bittersweet now in comparison to where they are now as opposed to a few years ago. So a little bit about me for anyone who's new to my channel. So I was born in 1988, which is an awesome year to be born because the 90s were a fantastic year to grow up with all the regular gaming consoles and greatness. So anyway, born in 1988, I was actually born with quite a few health issues, which took quite a while to be diagnosed. So I was actually born with deformed ankle joints, which are now referred to as tarsal coalitions. Back at the time when I was a child, they were referred to as paraneal spastic flatfoot, which of course, as a child of 7 years old, telling anyone this, they're like, what on earth are you talking about? And wouldn't believe that's the name of an actual condition, whereas now it is actually referred to medically as tarsal coalitions, but back then it had a different name. So I had mobility issues from the get-go, and that kind of escalated as I got older. So I had back problems by the time I was 12. I was having problems with my shoulders by the age of 18. The kicker was my knees suddenly not, the chronic pain in my knees that hit in my early 20s. I think that was around 2010, where that was the kind of the kicker, where I had studied animation at university, and then I dropped out, gone into full-time work where I worked for AQA, the exam board. And then when my knees just went wrong on me, I lost my job at that point, and no one could really figure out what on earth was causing all of these problems. So that began my kind of intense medical journey of being out of work from around 2010. So anyway, it took a while, and we eventually got the diagnosis. It took years to get diagnoses, where I was diagnosed with complex regional pain syndrome, which is likely as a result of a surgery I'd had when I was 10 years old to try and correct my one of my ankle joints. The other one they left untouched, but that actually resulted in effectively a defect in my central nervous system where I cannot toggle off pain. Pain is on a dimmer switch, so I can either have blaringly high or medium. It never really goes away, or ever goes away. So that was that. They were trying to correct that without properly exploring more avenues as to why this had gone wrong with the surgery when I was a child anyway. At which point they put me through sympathectomy injections into my spine. That then left me with severe nerve damage for about 3 years in my lower back. So at that point we then eventually got the diagnosis of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which suddenly explained an awful lot. But there are not really any treatments really that can manage this condition. So because of the nerve damage in my back, I was effectively housebound at that point for years. My father we'd never had the greatest relationship, my father and I, growing up, and a lot of it was down also as well to my medical issues, which was very difficult to understand and complex, and that had arisen by the age of 6 and 7, when I'd been non-verbal until the age of 3, and not being able to read or write until I was 7. So being able to communicate the medical issues or the pain that you were experiencing at that age when you're not articulate was very, very difficult. So medical professionals were always labeling as, oh, she's clumsy, she's lying, she's doing it for attention. Although most children haven't broken every single toe in both of their feet by the age of 12, which is what I'd done. Multiple fractures on multiple occasions, and they just put it down to weak ankles, she's being clumsy. So anyway, this surgery left me then with this complex regional pain syndrome. We then eventually got, in my mid-20s, the diagnosis of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. By that point, it had already been affecting my wrists. So I've always, if you look at my early videos, pretty much all of my videos have me in wrist supports for that. So at that point, it was very isolating. My mental health suffered extremely in my mid-20s, just trying to, I guess, build back, try and work out what my life is now with the limited mobility, the nerve damage, and these conditions that are making it difficult to function with chronic health issues. So my mental health suffered at that point. I did end up in hospital for quite a while in the intensive care unit. That was in around 2011. So I think I just started my YouTube channel at that point. So YouTube became an outlet for me for emotions, for connection, for people outside of the kind of slightly dysfunctional unit that was me and my parents all living together in my late 20s. So YouTube was very much, and has always been, kind of an outlet, sort of talk therapy, sort of, especially once I moved on to diamond painting after my health issues affected my ability to do artwork. So that was around the time of my YouTube channel, and I did quite well at the beginning of that, and I started doing freelance artwork. I worked on an illustrated book that I unfortunately never got around to getting published. But there was a sense of, at least I was doing something, putting something out there in the world almost, some kind of sense of purpose while still battling chronic health issues. So eventually, my father and I had many blow-ups about everything over the past, but after the sympathetic injections and the EDS diagnosis, he then launched himself quite heavily into research and what can we do, what are the alternative treatments that aren't available in the NHS that could be worth considering. So eventually, 2015, my father takes me to Canada to see a specialist, Toronto. His name was Dr. Fred Khan. He has sadly passed away now, but he was an extraordinary man. I think he was in his late 80s or early 90s when I met him, 11 years ago. But his laser light technology actually did help with EDS is a collagen deficiency. So light therapy can help you boost your collagen levels, which can help with the chronic pain and the joint instabilities that come with that condition. So I actually managed to get myself mobile again. For the first time in 5 years, I was actually being able to reclaim a bit of independence in my life. But at the same time, in 2015, when I went to Canada, that was when a string of deaths in the family actually occurred. So we actually lost 5 people and the family dog in just 15 months. So that was quite an extensive, profound, ongoing grief almost from that, because there was a lot of cancer and things. And my mother actually got ill as well. So she first had a gallbladder issue, which then, so that was the first of it. And then a few months later, she got a kidney infection that went septic. So we're now 2016. The kidney infection that my mother had that went septic, they eventually managed to discharge her from the hospital. And then a few weeks later, she was straight back in again because the sepsis infection had damaged her heart. and they had to keep her in overnight for an emergency pacemaker surgery. So Mum was quite frail from that point. Her mobility never really recovered after having all of those issues. She tried, but she started declining, whereas I started doing better with my own physical health. So at that point, a lot of the household tasks I started just involving myself and taking over, whereas before, because of my health issues from a child, I'd always been told, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't go out, you're going to hurt yourself, you can't go back to work part-time when you're feeling okay, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can never leave, you can't manage on your own, you'll never be able to own your own place, you'll never be able to cope without us. So that was pretty much my whole life, was being told all of this. And now suddenly, and I'm not even noticed it's happening because I'm enjoying having more responsibility, more stuff to do around the house, chipping in. It becomes, we share tasks, and I would take over when Mum was struggling and stuff like that. And I didn't even notice this was even starting at that point. But that was also the beginning of my father's health declining as well. So 2016 was when my grandmother, my father's mother, passed away. And at that point we noticed the change, especially we had the estate completely wound up by 2017. So when he was winding up my grandmother's estate, the way he did filing changed. At the time I just thought, oh, well, you're winding up an estate, clearly there's an awful lot of paperwork, that's why it's spread out everywhere. Because I mean, it was on the dining room table, his desk, the side corner table, and all over the floor in the office. So I just thought there's an awful lot of paperwork and he's just, being organized. But this paperwork all over the floor in piles with labels and sticky notes, post-it notes, handwritten notes on everything, that became the norm. Whereas in fact it was actually my father's brain at that point struggling to hold information together in his head, but because he was so articulate, very high IQ, he was masking it very, very well, to the point where no one really noticed anything was wrong. But he had also started losing interest in things and withdrawing from people as well. And at first I was like, oh cool, Dad has actually calmed down. It's actually nicer being in this house around him when he's not so uptight all the time. So, because it wasn't just him being uptight, Mum had always been uptight as well. She was very sort of emotional, I'm going to do this whether you tell me to or not kind of thing. Very almost ADHD, I think my mother is, whereas my father's very more autistic kind of spectrum. Although I once mentioned that to him and he bit my head off because he did not like that idea whatsoever. But he's also probably the most autistic person I've ever met, and it runs in the family. So yeah, so 2017, my father's changed the way he's doing filing, and I'm putting it down to he hasn't grieved grandma properly. He didn't feel like he took any time, he didn't cry, he just went straight into working on winding up that estate. So that's fine. Then I think we have, things calm down a little bit, things kind of go back to normal. There's no deaths for a while, which is a bit of a relief. And then we got a new car, and I remember because I was very active on DeviantArt at the time under a different username, which was reality -bunny. I always call it dash, but reality bunny on DeviantArt. And I remember making a journal entry about this car that we just got. So my father had gone to get a haircut 20 minutes away, which favourite barbers, that's where he goes. And when he gets out of the barber's, he can't find the car. So this, I think, is either 2018 or 2019. So he's ringing up home saying, the car's been stolen, it's not here, the car's gone. So my mother, even though she's got eye problems at this point, she gets into the spare car that we've got, even though she's never driven very far for the last few years anyway. But she drives over to Godalming, and she finds Dad on the side of the road, and then they just drive around the streets. And eventually they find the car. It hasn't been stolen. Dad just forgot where he'd parked it. And we all had a big laugh and went, yeah, well done, that was funny. And then there were little things like he'd gone to, this was slightly later on, he went to the GP's in his slippers. And so little things like this. But we just thought, you know, old age, it's funny, sort of amusing, these little blunders, and he's laughing about it. We're laughing about it. And then that was the very start, I think, was that car. That's kind of where I kind of pinpointed in hindsight of, yeah, things were actually not doing too well in 2018 and 2019. So what followed the car incident was then a late VAT fine on the family business, and then on my father's personal tax as well, for not completing the tax returns on time. So at this point we're like, okay, once I get as a coincidence, but then it happened actually 3 times. So the family business got hit twice, and my dad's personal tax got hit once as well. So we got fines and things. And we're like, what on earth is going on here? Then of course 2020 happened, which is the dreaded lockdown, which happened literally, I think it was like a day or 2 after my birthday. And then that really put a kind of a scupper on everything, because I noticed my father's memory getting worse in 2020. And of course with COVID happening, the doctors were like, it's stress, it's depression, it's, you need to be on these, you know, it's your prostate, it's this, it's that. So it ended up taking 2 years of endless, I mean, the most stupid thing they put us on was the chronic fatigue help session, where it was basically like, download these mindfulness apps and it will improve your symptoms. It's like, yeah, no, there's something a lot worse going on here, because it's not just he's forgetting things, he's losing things are going missing, he's forgetting where he's put his cup down. I'm finding cups in weird places around the house. And then, you know, he's not remembering things. We had this family game on my phone or on my iPad called Wordscapes, and where you have to put in a word using the letters, and if it's right it goes on the board, if it's wrong it goes doo-doo. And he was putting in the same word that was wrong over and over and over every few seconds. And it's like, but we've already done that one. And it's not in... So I noticed it with the gaming. I noticed it with the things going missing. I noticed, you know, the memory issues. But it was getting other people to get that on board. And you kept having to fight and go, no, there's something that's not right. We need to be in front of the right people. What's going on here? So eventually we do get referred to the dementia clinic. Then of course they have to run a PET scan, which is a detailed scan of your brain. That waiting list was 9 months just to get this PET scan so we could get a diagnosis. When we did, so now we're hitting the end of 2021. We already started noticing the symptoms before 2020 had even hit. So, and then it takes again until the beginning of 2022 before they finally turn around and say, we've seen all the results, we've done all the tests, you've got Alzheimer's disease, here's the medication, we're discharging you back to the GP, goodbye. And that was the end of that. So at that point, you know, I remember at the time ringing my friend, who is actually now my husband. We got married back in December of 2025. I remember him being the first person I called, because I was like, this changes everything. And at the time, I hadn't done any research on Alzheimer's. I was basing my reaction on vascular dementia, not Alzheimer's disease, because my nanny had had vascular dementia. So I assumed it was going to be like that, and it wasn't. Alzheimer's, in my opinion, from dealing with both, Alzheimer's is crueler, longer, harsher, and just not... vascular seems kinder. No dementia is kind, but vascular in a way almost seems kinder than what my parents are now going through. So we get the diagnosis 2022. You know, we're making steps, but my father's in complete denial. His medical file goes missing in the house. I only found it a month or two ago. His medical file went missing for years after he got that diagnosis because he'd hidden it. I found it stuffed right at the back of the filing cabinet. But you know, all the stuff about Alzheimer's, everything was put away, out of sight, out of mind. There is nothing wrong with me. So of course, you know, my father's always had his ways, the way it was done. I think my mother and I both also went into denial. We'll just keep plodding on regardless. So that's what we did. I remember talking when I first started doing whip and chats about the horrible nurse that had rung us that really upset my father. So at this point I'd already pretty much been doing all the medical appointments for him, of organising them, talking to the consultants, working out what was what. I'd already taken over at that point. But this nurse, instead of ringing me as the carer at this point, rang my dad about his driving. You've got to report it to DVLA. The nurse did it because she was legally obligated to. My father had a massive meltdown, threw the phone across the room and smashed things. So then so around this time, 2022, we're now entering the kind of aggression phase of my father. Although I should say that was sort of happening 2021, because after we started going through these tests with the GPs of we've got to figure out what's going on, we also tried to sell the family business at that point, because there was clearly, after the late VAT fines, it's clearly Dad can no longer run it as company secretary anymore. He needs to step down. The thing has been in the family so long now, it's run down, it needs someone else needs to take over the portfolio of this. So that began the selling of the family business, which that one was tricky with dealing with my father. He wanted to do things on his timescale. Lawyers and solicitors, they don't work on a sick person's timescale. They need stuff done straight away. So it was like, okay, we've got to send the statements, bank statements over to them. We've got to do this, we've got to do that. Dad was having freak out, smashing things, broke a plate, broke a lighter, threw the little chip and pin machine for the bank across the room, and it hit the wall. And it was just at that point as well, he got us locked out of the bank, his bank. He put in the wrong passcode 3 times, got us completely locked out of our own their bank account. And then he did the same with me. It's like, Dad, why are you even using my passwords and logging in on my bank? I don't want to get locked out. So I stopped him after he'd done, tried to log in twice on mine, because I didn't know he was doing it. It's like, why are you even looking at my finances? I'm like 30 something at this point. Because at that point as well, this is when I'd started getting closer with my friend, who then became my partner. But my father was driving around the streets looking for me if I wasn't back by 10 o'clock. So my partner had a 6-year-old daughter when I first met him. So she was like 8 or something when I'd be going round to their house, because she'd be like, come back and watch cartoons with me and stuff like that. They had dogs, I had a dog. It was quite fun to be not in the house. And they'd welcomed me into their family. So it was nice to be part of that. But my father was driving round the streets of the village where we lived. My husband, at the time, he lived 10-minute walk away from our house. It was in the same area. But my father was driving around the streets at 10 o'clock at night, just round in circles, loops and loops, waiting for me to get home because I wasn't back at 10 o'clock. It was like New Year's Eve. Second the fireworks were going on at midnight, he was at the door knocking, let me in, he's got to go home. And it's like, most 30-something-year-olds don't have their parents doing this. So they'd always been quite controlling of me anyway. Now they're holding on even tighter. So eventually we get that family business sold, we get Dad's diagnosis. What's next? Everyone's in denial. My mother sorts out lasting power of attorney, which was a blessing on that. So she put me, my half-brother and my half-brother's wife on as lasting power of attorney for both of them. So I've got the other lasting power of attorney keep telling me, you've got to get rid of the car, you can't let him drive, it's got to go. I'm like, at the moment he's still okay on distances. I mean, we noticed it was gradually increasing. Like, I remember making, again, a whip and chat about it. When my father got lost trying to pick me up, it was like half an hour away, where I was doing this managing emotions course. So at that point, I'd already, after Dad's diagnosis, I'd put the wheels in motion for my own mental health of, let's get, counselling and managing emotions, and see how I can best handle my own health going forward with Dad's diagnosis, because, he was the one that was taking me to all of my medical appointments my entire life. Now I'm having to do it for him, so I need to be able to support myself better. So I was already trying to put in place these things that would hopefully benefit me. And Dad was always very much, because he took me to things and has always taken me to things, he insisted on taking me to these things rather than let me sort out my own transport to get there. So my dad drops me off at this place, and then he doesn't come and pick me up. And I remember ringing Mum and saying, has he left yet? He's like, no, he hasn't left yet. I keep telling him he's got to come get you. So anyway, he does leave. So I'm sitting there, he was supposed to come and get me 40 minutes ago at this point, and he's just left the house. And then, of course, he doesn't turn up, and I'm sitting there in the rain on a cold step for almost 4 hours, I think it was, waiting for him and going, what on earth happened? He hasn't got a mobile phone at this point because he's been cut off, disconnected. He doesn't have the number anymore. He didn't want a new mobile phone. So we've got no way of tracking where he is. At that point, it's like, okay, well,
now you can't drive outside of our hometown.
Whenever I put limitations on, he did actually abide by them, and he said it himself. I'm good for about an hour in the car. Gradually, that time decreased. So he was still telling doctors he was okay for an hour, and I was shaking my head, going half an hour at best. So we stopped doing, medical appointments, and I slowly started overruling him and booking stuff without him, so he didn't have to do anything unless it was emergencies for GP appointments and things like that. So I was building him up to letting go of it, because my father was very, very into cars, built kit cars, loved motorbikes, he did advanced motoring tests as well into his 50s, and police driving tests and things like that, because he was just so into his driving. So I knew if I take this away from him, he is going to go downhill rapidly, because that is his identity, which is why I pushed so hard to keep him driving as long as possible, but under supervision. I didn't let him drive without anyone else in the car and things like that. So anyway, where have we got to? So 2021 was also when we had the cowboy builders, and it was actually, Dad fractured his back at that point in 2021 as well, which again, people were going, oh right, yeah, well that's probably why you're losing your memory then, because you're in pain from your back. It's like, no, that's just an extra symptom of the body collapsing at this point. So we get to, we get to 20, so still in 2022, that was when I had this fantastic counsellor. I'd never had a therapist that I've actually gone on with before, because usually they don't understand long-term health conditions, or that kind of, all the trauma that comes with that, and medical and all the things like that. So finally having this counsellor in my corner, I've managed to process an awful lot of the stuff, like my relationship with my father and how things had gone throughout my whole life, and I was able to put a lot of the the not great parenting parts behind me, because you don't need to hold on to it by the time they're at the stage now where you let it go. All the stuff that went wrong doesn't matter anymore, it's unimportant, which was really great, having that counsellor to help me actually be able to put things from my past aside and just deal with what's happening. And one of the things that this counsellor told me in 2022, which was fantastic, might have been, I think it was 22, was reach out to other members of the family. At this point, like the other lasting power of attorneys, I didn't feel like I was getting much back from them. So I reached out to my uncle, because he'd been messaging me every few months on Facebook saying, how's my brother? My dad and my uncle never really got along. but he was taking interest. So I started reaching out to him, and we were communicating every week and talking. He became a second father to me, and suddenly the weight of the world of having to deal with my parents, it felt so much less, because there was someone in my corner who, he dropped everything and he drove 4 hours all the way down to come and see me, to help me with my parents and to put things in place. Convinced Dad to sell that car that he'd lost a few years ago because it still had some value in it. But my God, did my dad put up a fuss. You still got one car, Dad. You still got the car you like the best, but we're getting rid of this other one because you're the only one that can drive. You can't drive 2 of them. It's got to go. But that caused so much upset, and in the end, because it hadn't been driven for so long, that car actually, the battery failed on it, and because it was all controlled on a fob, we couldn't even unlock the car to get the stuff out of it, and the dude was supposed to be picking it up and collecting it later that day. So it's like, wow, because the MOT's run out, we can't get AA to come in and break into it on the drive. They can only tow it to a test centre. We've technically sold it this morning. What on earth do we do? Fortunately, the guy we sold it to actually knew someone who could break into locks and got into it for us, which was ended up being quite good. But, you know, if that car had just been, if he'd let me sell that car after, you know, a year earlier, that drama could have been avoided. But unfortunately, this became a common pattern with the cars, because we had a problem with the other car that we'd left him as well in the end. But I haven't got to that point yet. That's the beginning of 2026. We're still in 2022. So my uncle was fantastic. He was just like the light in my life. Everything became just easier. And it was like having a father again. And it was just wonderful. Yet bitter sad that, you know, my own father was slipping away at this point, because he's, you know, he's asking me for help. Whereas before it was always, you can't do this by yourself. You've got, you know, wouldn't let me change a light bulb kind of thing. And now, you know, I'm doing all of the banking, I'm doing all of the cooking, I'm doing all of the meal planning, I'm doing all of the gardening, I'm doing the hoovering and the housework. And it's like, we need extra help in here, because with my health issues, this is what became enjoyable to suddenly have more responsibility is now becoming too difficult. So we got a cleaner in, who came and helped, and we got the gardeners in that it was my uncle that helped with finding these people to help with this, to take some of the load off, which was good. But there was still, you still got to manage the cleaners, you still got to show them where the sheets are, you still got to tell the gardeners what they need to be doing, because my mum has started stepping back from taking responsibility for all this as well. Which again is the first signs, as it turns out, of her Alzheimer's journey beginning as well, because she was, she blamed me. She was like, oh, I don't know how to cook anymore because you do it all. Oh, I used to be able to do this and that and the other, but when we moved here, your dad took over everything. It's like, okay, rather than actually accepting, hold on, there's something I used to be able to do it, I can't do it now, rather than blame other people. She was, we didn't quite see what's happening at that point yet for my mum. So, right, we sold the car, my uncle's on my side, things are starting to feel a lot better that summer. I think we're in, summer of 2023, things are sort of were settling, and then suddenly there's massive issues with my parents' house. I mean, we ended up, I can't remember, we found out because the water company contacted us and they said, we think you've got a leak because you're getting through so much water, we're going to send someone round to check to see what's going on. And they were like, yeah, there's definitely a leak somewhere happening. Thames Water aren't allowed to dig up inside the property. They're only allowed to dig up driveways and stuff around the property. So we ended up having to call in Dino Rod, which were specialists, because eventually it turned out that the flood was underneath the garage in all the old pipework. And that had flooded. We had a 4-foot workman's pit. I'll put some videos up actually if you want to see some of what this water disaster looked like. And that was filled with 3 foot of water, this workman's pit in the garage that was under the kit car. So none of the people we talked to would bail it out. We had to do that by hand. My mum's trying to help and tips a bucket of sewage water on my head, which was absolutely revolting, because she's trying to help. And my partner and I, on his birthday, yet again, it became a tradition of his birthday every year, we're doing manual labour at my parents' house. So anyway, we drain all the sewage water out of this thing. It's still filling up, it's still leaking. Dyno Rud come in, they try and fix it, think they fixed it, put it all back together again. A week later, the workman's pit is filling up with water again. So, and this time it's also rising up the side of the house outside. So it's like, this is spreading. So we did, eventually this escalated, because before that we'd had an issue a few months earlier with the neighbours had cut through the phone line. So what ended up happening was the neighbours had cut through the phone line, which then caused BT to have to come out, dig in a whole new trench in the drive to put in the new phone line. They had hit the main power cord to the house when they'd done this. All the vibration from digging up the driveways what caused the rusty pipes under the garage to fail. So the water had risen, soaked the earth so badly that it had then shorted out the main power lead to the house. So we ended up having to get a generator on the drive. So you've got electricians turning up, and you've got the Dyno Rod plumbers. There's conflict over health and safety. We can't both be working in the garage the whole time, and we're having to get a generator delivered, and it's all chaos. At that point, I went to view the house that I'm sitting in right now for a first viewing on the day that generator was being delivered. So I ended up making an offer on this house just because at that point, this constant, the pit, emptying the pit, wheeling the kit car and the stuff in and out of the garage. I was so fed up of my parents' house. I was like, I just can't do this anymore. So I ended up then going into the process of buying my own house. My mother at this point is also kind of going downhill as well. And I'm noticing it with the cooking, because we always sort of cooked together. I did most of the work, I told her what to do, but she did little bits of chopping here and there that she could do sitting down and stuff like that. But if I wasn't down at 4:45 on the dot to start dinner and prep dinner, she was going ahead and doing it all of herself, but not reading the instructions, cutting things not the way the recipe had stated. So with me and my sort of I like to have things orderly and in an order so that I can multitask and get things done as quickly and speedily as possible, so I'm not damaging my own health issues by standing up too long. But Mum, she'd be cleaning up stuff before I'd finished using it. I'd go to grab my spoon that I'd just been using to stir stuff. My spoon's been washed up and now it's over there in the drainer. She'd be back and forth in my area, and I'd be having to kind of move around her with pots and pans while she's in the way fussing over each little tiny bit of cleaning that was happening. So this became, cooking, which was once a hobby, became a really stressful experience, and I started actually sneaking downstairs, getting into the kitchen and starting this process and stuff before she'd realised I didn't even come downstairs to do it, so that I could get most of it done while she wasn't in the way. It's all these little tweaks and changes I was having to make to my own routine to try and make stuff flow better because of the confusion that was setting in, but I didn't know it at that point. My focus was mostly on Dad's pill, what's Dad doing, all of this, because he's the one with the Alzheimer's diagnosis who'd been more visible when things had started going wrong, whereas my mother had always been a bit sort of all over the place, so it was less noticeable with her early symptoms of things. So I buy this house, shed load of paperwork. If you bought a house, you know how long it takes. And then my investment also took a massive 15 grand hit just before completion date when I was about to pull the money out. So that was a massive, oh my God, stress as well. And then the place needed work doing to it. And then with my parents, there was an issue. We were still on meter readings at the time, energy meter readings, where you had to submit the meter reading manually. Dad would always go in take the meter, write down the meter readings, and then give them to me, and I'd submit them. He'd written them down wrong. I submitted them wrong. So then every single month I was having to contact the energy people to say, I cannot submit the new reading because it's saying that it's lower than the previous reading. And it's like, look, there was a mistake on the system. This is what the number is. Here are the photos proving what the number is. But every single, even though they said they'd correct it, you won't have a problem, you can submit them normally the next month. This went on for 4 months of ringing them every single month to say, look, I can't submit the meter readings because we put one in wrong once. At that point, they sent out, so where are we now? We're January 2024. January 2024, they send these, the meter people out to install new smart meters so we never have to submit a reading again. Wonderful, you'd hope. They actually went, you've got a gas leak, right? We're going to have to cut off your supply, which means our system, the hot water and the central heating, all run off the same thing. So we had no hot water, no central heating for weeks because we've got a gas leak. And what had happened was, I think it was the year or so before, the boiler, or a couple years before the diagnosis, my father, he'd never wanted to upgrade that boiler in the 30 years it's been there. It came with the house. It's obsolete. You cannot get workmen to touch it. Even if you can get the spare parts online, workmen will not touch old boilers. So what did my father do? And now this is like, I should have picked up on that this was a bad thing to do, but you know, dad knows best. At the time was where I was feeling. He had repaired the boiler himself with a YouTube video while he's struggling with memory issues. So I had actually been throwing up for 6 months and just thinking it's the stress of dealing with everything that's happening and buying the house and the work to the house and all the problems at Salonian, which is the name of my parents' house. So it turns out that the throw-ups was all because of this slow gas leak that we had that was making me sick, because my bedroom was directly over where the boiler was. So at least at that point I stopped throwing up when we got the new boiler in. But it was at that exact moment when we were in the middle of this no boiler, no hot water situation, no electric situation, heating. That was when I got the message from my uncle that I've just been admitted into hospital. He was trying to put a cheery face on it. Don't worry, they're still running tests. But it was widespread cancer, and in 10 days later, he was dead. And that changed me. That rocked my world beyond its foundations. I had lost someone who had become a second dad to me, who was my primary source of support with my parents, and he was gone. And it was just, I hit a really bad point because things went downhill from that, because not only did he die, weeks later my godfather, who rang my dad every single week and had done my entire life, also died. That then followed my mother getting chest infection that would not recover from antibiotics, that required 4 A&E trips in 3 weeks, and it absolutely crucified me trying to keep my mother alive when A&E keeps discharging her, saying she's not bad enough for us to do anything. The GP saying she's too bad for us to actually do anything, she needs to be admitted to hospital, and the hospital repeatedly sending her away even when we've packed bags, because the GP have told us to pack bags and get yourself admitted. They eventually diagnosed pneumonia. They discharged her with the same antibiotics we'd been on for the past 3 or 4 weeks. It was absolutely horrific, while still trying to maintain houses, because the plumbing at my parents' house, it didn't stop with that Dino Rock flood. It ended up being every 2.5 months, plumbers and workmen having to come in to deal with the busted water system, the busted valve on the showers, the broken taps, the non-flushing toilets, and then pipework that it turned out wasn't even connected, which then caused even more floods happening in the utility. So there was an awful lot of maintenance, and of course we had my partner's house, Aidan's house, his name is Aidan, his house as well to maintain, as well as the new one we had just bought, and my parents, which was run down and needing constant maintenance and repair on top of 3 people's complex medical issues. And so I'm ground down. I'm mostly focusing on day-to-day. The anxiety at that point has become extreme because I'm having to multitask so many different things. Eventually, September 2024 is when I moved out of my parents' house. And I thought, okay, finally, maybe I can get a break. A week later, my husband, now husband, Aidan, and his daughter actually moved in as well a week later. At that point, we started really tackling his house to try and get it cleared, emptied, presentable, so that it could go on the market, so we could get down to just having 2 houses instead of 3 houses to maintain. However, moving out of my parents' house did not help whatsoever. It increased my workload, and I'd had really bad issues after my uncle and after my mum's health issues. I literally hit quite rock bottom with my own mental health as well. I had a bit of a breakdown. I was under the care of a psychologist at that point, but again, they gave me grief counselling and just regular counselling, and go on this chronic pain management course, which was unbelievably patronising. Not one single person who joined that course for session 1 remained till the end of the final session. I was the last person to bail out, and I bailed out before the final session had even finished because it was that bad. It was like people on chronic pain courses have lived with this for years, and you're giving us opposite advice to what actual medical professionals and other counsellors have also put into place. It's like, who is actually running this course, because they don't have any idea. And everyone else on the course felt the same way, which is why every single person left it who had attended. So, and again, the grief counsellor, wasn't really helpful, because it wasn't just my ankle that I was grieving. It's the loss of my parents, the loss of my father, the responsibilities of 3 people weighing solely on me, and I don't know how to cope with it. So at that point, I had literally got to the point where I just want to get the house ready. My partner and his daughter moved in, and then I can just get my affairs in order and check out of this world, because I had gotten to such a dark spot. I didn't think it was possible to push through it, but at the same time, I knew if anything happens to me, my parents are 100% on their own, and they're probably going to die, because no one is going to want to be able to do these A&E trips and maintain my mother's breathing issues. She has COPD, she has diabetes, she has arthritis in her neck, her fingers, her spine, bunions, and eye issues. And the worst bit was my mother's hearing. So this was absolutely just awful. But before we got that, I think when my uncle had died, just before he died, I'd actually made... apparently, I don't have any recollection of doing this. The GPs told me I did it, but I don't remember doing it. But I'd already made... I'd gotten mum in front of a GP sometime in January 2024 to talk to them about her memory. And but I have no memory of doing this, but it did definitely happen. But it was 6 months after that where I then took mum back again, because she was like, oh, my memory is not right. And I'm like, okay, let's get you back into the front of the GP again. I think I was in denial of, please, not her as well. So eventually I got her back into front of the GP, and they said, oh yeah, you came and talked to us about this in January. And I'm like, did I? I have absolutely no recollection of that ever happening, but it was on the system that I brought her in to talk about her memory and start doing memory tests back in January. And I was like, okay, apparently that happened then. I have no memory of it. But then we began that journey, and it was, what year was it that she eventually got her diagnosis? That was, I think, 2025, the very beginning of 2025 is when she got her diagnosis. So 2024 we're still in now, and I've just moved out, and if I don't, at this point it's getting a bit ridiculous, because I'm already there multiple times a week, and then as soon as, I'd because we're so close, I didn't move very far away. I moved far enough away that it was still a manageable distance for me to travel to see my parents, because at the time I was like, but you know, they support me, I need to be close by if I'm leaving, was more where my brain was at, not, oh, actually they need me close by so that I can actually look after everything. So it was actually very lucky where I did end up buying my house, because it's like 2-minute drive from where my parents live. Unfortunately, I can't drive, so that's an issue. It's more of a 20-minute walk than probably a 5-minute drive, 20-minute walk, which I can't always do with my health issues. It's very variable from day to day. So anyway, this is when we started the process with that. I've actually been saying to the other lasting and power of attorneys for about a year at this point, I need help with my mother's hearing aids, because I'm not getting anywhere on the NHS. We're getting problems, the hearing aids aren't working, we try a different type, they don't work either, they're really fiddly, I'm having to clean them constantly. Can we get her in front of a private person? I can't drive, can you guys please deal with this? It took them an entire year, because I started making noise about it in 2023. It took them an entire year of me suffering through, you know, ENT and hearing aid departments at you know, the NHS hospitals. Just before the lasting power of attorneys, the other two took notice and then finally got her in front of a private hearing aid specialist, and then finally got her in front of a private ENT specialist, who then diagnosed that she had both fungal infections and bacterial infections and severe eczema in those ears, which is what's causing all of the hearing aid problems. So that began, and it's still going on now. How many years have we been going on with this now? Can't remember. It was 2025. 2024 we were having all these, the start of the hearing issues. 2025 we got her Alzheimer's diagnosis. Summer 2025 her ears are in such a shocking state, but she's not following the directions she can't medicate herself, she's not putting the drops in properly, she's not cleaning them properly. She's told repeatedly by medical professionals, you have to leave those hearing aids out to give your ears a chance to breathe, because you're just pushing the infection back in. It got to the stage after several months where I had to confiscate every single hearing aid in the house, because she'd even found old pairs of my nanny's hearing aids, which were decades old, and sticking those in her ears. Anything, she was just trying to, and then things were not working, the wires were getting clogged up, it was costing us more to repair these private hearing aids. So I ended up having to confiscate all of it, and my God, did she have a breakdown. She cried in front of the private ENT person that we'd gone to. She cried when we got outside of the building, she cried in the car, at which point I gave her a cigarette. It's like, you know, you put a dummy in a baby's mouth to stop it crying. Here's a cigarette, because oh my God, the smoking got out of control with her as well, and still is an issue now. So her ears were an absolute catastrophic mess, and because of these, it wasn't just the ears, she was getting these constant chest infections. At the time it was every couple of months. Now where we're at, it's every 5 weeks. But back to a year ago, it was 2 years ago, it was yeah, it's hard to keep track of the timeline. So 2025, we had all her hearing aid meltdowns. I bought her a whiteboard so she could communicate. Also, Dad's driving was deteriorating at this point in 2025. So we're in summer 2025. And at that point I'd already been, to avoid upset, I would arrange transport, community transport for, it's called All About Care. I think it's All About, no, it was some kind of care thing anyway, where people volunteer and they drive you to places basically. So as long as I had transport already lined up, it was fine, especially since now that I wasn't living in the house and I just made my own way there, usually with, again, this volunteer transport service. That was great, because I was like, Dad would say, what do I have to do? And I was like, no, nothing. You know, I've got someone taking us. And he was like, oh, so I don't have to do anything. I was like, no, you can go sit down. And then he seemed to be almost relieved, the fact that he didn't have to drive anywhere. So at that point, I was very, very relieved, because even with the little trips at this point, I thought it'd been okay until I went with Dad to the GPs to actually talk about renewing his medical license. And it was on the trip to the GPs, which the GPs, it's literally just up the road from my parents, up the hill, over a main hill, down the hill the other side, you're at the GPs. You get there really quickly. But I noticed that he was driving so incredibly slowly that even though there was nothing coming on that main road, it wouldn't have taken more than 30 seconds for something to be speeding down that road and hit him, because he's taking so long just to cross a junction. It's like, oh dear, this isn't great. So in summer 2025, and I did let them wave wave him through and pass him, because they, the way this stuff is tested is you go to the GPs go, well, I'm not a driving professional, how am I supposed to test whether or not you're capable to drive? Would look at me and I would either nod or go no. And every time I nodded, just to avoid the upset and the conflict that I knew would arise from my father. If he was told, no, you can't do this, it was better to ease him out of it than to blatantly take everything away. So I knew his driving at this point wasn't good, which meant I took over everything, which also started making things difficult for emergency transport for last minute medical appointments for my parents. Mostly my mum with her chest infections, where I don't drive, she's not mobile. The volunteer travel people, they need a week's notice. They can't do urgent last minute things, you have to book it. So now we're like, okay, this starts eating into other financial resources as well, because now he can't drive. But after I moved out, I mean, I was getting called back. I'd been there all day. I'd come home. As soon as I get in through the door, I was getting phone calls saying, we can't get the telly to work. Can you come right back? And I'm like, we've got to get my stepdaughter off to cadets and fed. We've got like half an hour to do this. And he was like, we'll come and get you. So my dad actually drove all the way up to my house to pick me up, to go all the way back to his house just so that I could turn on the telly. And it was sort of like, I didn't question it. I just did it because, I think in the end, my stepdaughter had a sandwich, and then, my husband ended up taking her off to the cadets. But again, it ate into the evening. And then this became a recurring pattern of, we can't get the telly to work, the skybox isn't working, we can't get the heating to turn on, can't get the hot water on, can't do this, can't do that. So I was having to literally drop everything to go down to sort this, because otherwise you'd never hear the end of it. It's like, but it was just, it became a bit ridiculous. At one point I didn't answer my phone because I was in the middle of a medical video consultation. I didn't answer my phone because of that. And then my father, while I'm on the call with my medical consultation in the sitting room, I'd just finished actually talking about my parents, and then my dad actually walks through my conservatory door and straight into my house. And I'm like, what? Wait, why are you here? Like, what's happened? It's like, yeah, I was going to ring you back in a minute. I'm on a call. It's like, okay, I'll wait till you're done. Again, it was because of the telly. Couldn't get the telly to work because that skybox kept freezing on them, because they'd leave it on all the time just to pull out the plug at the back and plug it back in, and not an issue. But it's the fact that they couldn't even wait half an hour. The patients had gone because I hadn't texted back straight away, so they turned up. So this became a kind of a matter of, if I get a phone call or I get a text, it has to be answered and dealt with straight away, because otherwise Dad's going to go off driving by himself and come and find me, just like he was doing when I was, visiting my partner at his house back before, when my dad was just turning up there unexpectedly, and he was like, yeah, this is not embarrassing at all for someone in my early 30s. So yeah, it became quite difficult. And then the real kicker, and the reason I actually stopped uploading YouTube videos, was after we'd moved in here, I was going to, we kind of agreed, my partner and I agreed that, get married. But I was like, well, this doesn't feel like a big thing. I'm going to make an actual party out of this, because it's my husband's 50th was coming up last year, so 2025. I was like, let's also make this like a surprise engagement party that he doesn't know about, and get like a really outrageous cake, which was quite a rude, outrageous cake. We ordered a boat party, got all his friends to come. It was great fun. very awkward with doing my big speech. If he doesn't mind, I might actually, I'll put a clip in of my like engagement proposal, but I'll check with him first because it's mostly like a whole video footage is on him, so he might not want that shared. But
getting planted.
okay, this is really awkward now because there's so many people looking in this direction. Oh, and you as well. No.
So many people. There's only the same many of people that started this trip.
This is going to be a fun cake when it's scratchy in the face.
What?
Prepare yourself. Thank you for being in my life for all these years. You have been the most remarkable human being that I have ever met. I cannot imagine my life without you. So.
Perfect pair. Wow. Ooh. Okay.
And to death do us part, baby. It's a nipple ring.
All right.
It didn't fit in the box. I had to tie it into the box with ribbon. So,
Don't want to be playing bows and arrows with this one on.
do I need my backup present? Because you haven't actually answered the question yet.
Go on then, why not?
Why not? It's
You
great.
want the backup present? Fine.
I think I think
Open it.
But there was yes has already been said.
Okay, cool. I missed that.
Everyone seemed to have missed that one. But
Cool. Right, you didn't say it loud
He said,
enough.
yeah, why
Sorry.
not? He said,
Alright,
yeah, why not?
Okay.
before that said yes.
I'd have to get you a stripper.
Right.
I'll do
Well,
that.
Fake stripper.
here's a toast
Yeah.
to your new girlfriend. If you had said no.
Oh my god.
Blow her up. Blow her up.
I'm sure we can put this to good use.
Oh my god, that's terrifying.
And everyone in the EDS group said if she survives the trip, she has to be our bridesmaid.
We haven't got any helium. Where do I
No,
go?
yeah, that's the question.
Oh, in the back.
Back shots. Sorry.
You can get that back to the bloke when you got the boat back.
We picked up a hitchhiker.
Now we just found that out.
She's floating in the river.
Yeah, had to rescue it.
This is going to take a lot of planning.
That's what she said.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yes, anyway, the party was great. What happened after the party was not, because and this is why I stopped making any YouTube videos whatsoever and stopped diamond painting completely, was I got really sick. And at the time I was like, okay, this is clearly just a stomach bug. And for the first week I then had to, for the first time in, since probably 2011, for the first time ever, I went a whole week without seeing my parents, since 2011. So 15 years, and I finally have to take one single week off. And I said, you know, can I please, can you just, I can't deal with anything. Can you send me a list of what shopping you need, and I'll try and do it remotely and get stuff sent to you. So they gave me a short list and I did it remotely, and I was fine for 1 week, but I didn't get better. But I could not leave my parents without me any longer than that 1 week. That 1 week was pushing it as it was. So even though I'm unbelievably unwell with this stomach thing, throwing up on the toilet, I can't really leave the house because I need to be in proximity to that toilet at all times. And it was like, okay, so that's when I started having to rely on Ubers just to get down to my parents, whereas before I'm quite close to a bus stop. I could just get on the bus, go down the hill, and then get off and then up the hill, and then I'm at my parents. It was really easy to get there when you're not really, really, really sick to the point where you cannot even stand up without wanting to collapse, vomit, or mess yourself. But I didn't have a choice. I had to keep going. So the doctors are running all these tests over and over. It's all coming back clear. They even send me a text message saying, we found nothing in your blood results. Your blood results are fine. At which point I rang up and I was like, well, what on earth do we do? And they rang me back immediately and said, no, your blood tests aren't fine. They've got red flags everywhere. And I was like, why on earth did I get texted by the GP surgery telling me I'm fine, when clearly you're just saying they're not fine, and that should have been very easy to see. So if I hadn't chased that, they wouldn't have followed up at all, because, you know, somewhere something had cropped up and they're like, here's a complaint form. And I was like, I'm too ill to care. Just make me better. So anyway, they didn't. I haven't actually recovered. We're now on exactly, at the time I think I'm recording this, almost to the day, exactly 1 year now since my stomach problems first started, and it hasn't stopped for an entire year, with the multiple toilets and the throwing up every day, and my health actually just got worse and worse from that point, by still having to care for my parents as well, where they just needed so much of my time. So I got to the point where I can't get my little drill in the hole. There we go. I got to the point where I had to, whether I liked it or not, my husband was driving me down in my dressing gown and pajamas to deal with, again, telly issues, heating issues, the Wi-Fi won't connect to the thermostat, more plumbing issues, and, you know, there were times, you know, took taxis down there. The worst one was trying to deal with my dad's ultrasound, where I had to take him to hospital for that, because the travel there made me feel awful on top of already feeling awful. And then sitting there while they're scanning him, and I'm going, I need to lay down or pass out. But I can't, because I've got to help my dad put his clothes back on. I've got to get him now back to the taxi. I've got to get him home. At that point, I can then use their toilet and die, which is effectively what I did. I went straight up to what was my old room, dealt with my medical appointments that were phone calls that were coming the same day. I just dealt with all of it from my old room. So you had my mum coming up constantly to check on me, because, you know, back, forth. And then my dad, who'd forgotten I was even in the house. But my dad got worse at this point of like, he'd always ask, before I'd ever moved out, he'd always say, do you need a lift, or is Aidan coming to get you? Aidan, my husband. So he started like repeating that of, but without the first bit, without the do you need a lift bit. It was like, is Aidan coming to get you? A few minutes later, is Aidan coming to get you? Is Aidan coming to get you? Is Aidan? And this would go on for, usually, if I was waiting for Aidan to pick me up after work, this would go on for at least an hour and a half of every few minutes. That on top of all the other questions, it's draining to repeat yourself over and over and over again, especially when you have limited energy. If you're familiar with spoon theory of being able to pace yourself, communicating and talking to people is a drain on resources like there's no tomorrow. So I'm already knackered and ill and washed out. Diamond painting is gone. Cooking has gone out the window. I'm no longer cleaning the house or doing laundry. It's just piling up. We've booked our wedding for December, and we're getting closer to it, and I'm still not better. And then on top of everything else, I caught COVID. And this was the worst amount of illness I've ever been. I'm actually allergic to the COVID jabs, the vaccinations. So when I got this, I got it hard, and I'd never been so sick, and I was coughing up blood. And fortunately, both my parents had their COVID vaccinations, because they didn't, I don't know how they didn't, but they didn't catch it from me. But I was still down there multiple times a week, wearing face masks and repeatedly saying, stay away from me, because mum with her hearing would want to lean in to try and hear what I'm saying, and I'm like, you have to stay away from me. I was anti-back wiping everything I touched, you know, sanitizing my hands, being very careful they did not catch this bloody infection that was crippling me. Again, in hindsight, how on earth did I battle through not only what was eventually diagnosed as a Shigella infection in my gut, which is very, very rare. Usually it's something babies catch, but it's usually from either chicken or contaminated feces. So I either came into contact with something at that boat party that made me sick, or an Indian takeaway that we'd had the night after the boat party, one of which had chicken in it. So it was either one of those two things, but no one else at the boat party, no one else who had the takeaway, nobody else got sick except for me. Because at that point, I think I was already too run down as well, because it had been building with having to be on call the whole time. But getting sick meant I lost my hobbies, I lost my outlet, I lost the social element with friends, and all that was coming through at this point was basically being told what to do by the everlasting power of attorneys of, have you done this, are you aware of this, did you know this had been happening? And I'm like, of course I'm aware. I'm there all the time. I'm there in this point are still in denial about how bad things are. Like, oh, get your dad to go with your mum to the hospital. It's like, Dad can't even remember his own name. And we got to the point where I'd seen him walking down the shop at one point. And I'd been coming down in an Uber, and I said, hi, and I waved to him, and he was chatting to random people, and they were pointing at me and saying, do you know that woman? Do you know that girl? And eventually he walked up, and I was like, hi, Dad. Eventually, I think it twigged, but then this became a recurring pattern of every time he saw me, there was like a delay. There was a delay of trying to recognise who I was and work out who I was. And then the first thing he always said was, is Aidan with you? Because he associates only seeing me with Aidan, because I'd gotten to the point of, Aidan has to be the one to take me down there. We're having to sacrifice our weekends for me to manage, because I can't manage both my parents by myself. Anymore, not with the constant questioning. I mean, the greatest example of how bad this went was in 2025 was, it was kind of funny at the time, but then we had a new accountant who came for a meeting at the house, and my father kept taking his coffee mug, and Mum was kept yelling at him, give that man back his coffee mug, and then of course Dad would chat, and then he'd pick up the coffee mug again, and Mum was getting frustrated with him. But that was also her dementia kicking in as well, because she was struggling. So then by the time you get to November 2025, and we've got the financial advisor who comes down, who's been working with us now for decades. He knows my family better than me, because he's been around my whole life pretty much. But he is having trouble as well, because Mum's dementia at this point has become very apparent, because she is obsessing about the Christmas money. We've got to gift out the Christmas money. She's written it down on a piece of paper. She keeps handing it to us. We keep saying, right, we've got to move money around before we can get to this, Mum. And then she'll pick up the piece of paper again, put it back in front of us. We put it on the pile. She took it out the pile, put it back in front of us, over and over again. Even when the financial advisor had taken the paper from her, put it really far away to the side and said, we're going to get to it in a bit, she still went all the way around the table, picked up the paper, and then gave it back to me. It was like, yeah, okay, still got to move money around. There's no money to actually gift anyone anything for Christmas right yet. give me a minute here. And then, of course, I had my wedding, which my dad didn't want to go to, because I don't think he realised what was happening. He doesn't remember it at all, but I'd actually gotten to the point, because I'd been so ill, we hadn't done any planning. Everything at this point had been last minute, as in quickly pop over to the corner shop to pick up some flowers for a bouquet, because I haven't ordered anything, I haven't done anything, I don't actually have anything that really fits to wear. Okay, we'll go with my old skirt, which was something old. I had a blue bra on, which was something blue. I borrowed my mother's pearls, which was something borrowed, and something new was the top, which was quite cheap, at about 10 quid off eBay. So it was a bit of a chaotic mess. I didn't really want anyone there at all. I did not want to have my parents there. I didn't want to have to deal with them, but at the last minute it was like, you're going to regret it if you don't. Well, my husband said, you're going to regret it if you don't have them there. It's going to be the only chance our parents ever have to meet each other. Let's just invite the parents, which is what we did, which of course caused upset on other members of my family, who then got very offended that I didn't invite them, and has never even wished me a congratulations on my marriage to this day, and it's been nearly 7 months now. So that was the rush of the wedding. The day after the wedding was Christmas Day, and my mother was in my brother's charge, and she had a fall at his house. She'd gone out for a cigarette. No one had gone out with her. I always go out with Mum and never leave her by herself, if she's, outside. But he hadn't supervised her. She'd had a fall. She'd crawled back into their house through the utility. And basically I just got told, right, your mother's had a fall. You're going to have to go check on her. And it's like, is that right? Okay. Well, I can't, because I'm not even in the area at the moment. I'm actually up in London. So they just didn't want to take her to A&E. They didn't want to have to sit with her. They didn't want to have to do any of the work or the scans, which inevitably I ended up having to do, and it ended up being on a weekend of all things when we had to take her for a CT scan. But that fall was the beginning. She then had an ear infection, a chest infection. The chest infection didn't heal up. We had to get more antibiotics for the chest infection. She then gave that chest infection to at Easter to my stepdaughter's grandmother on her mother's side, who had been literally a godsend. She started doing the emergency appointments for me. She's the same age as my mum, but she started, because she can drive, she started doing all of the urgent medical appointments for my parents for me. And there was a lot of them in very close succession, as it turned out, because we had my dad wasn't doing well. I'd realised my dad wasn't doing well the summer of 2025 in hindsight. Because when I'd had them round at my house, he had sat in the conservatory, which was really hot in that conservatory, with his coat and his jumper on, and he was cold, and we were in like 30-degree weather. So that should have been a sign at that point that things weren't okay with him, but I didn't. So what had also happened, November 25, was I'd mentioned about the cars thing and trying to take away the car. I knew that after Dad had driven us to that medical appointment and I'd waved his license through and been like, yeah, it's fine. No, it's not. I knew that car was going to have to go. There was no question of it. I knew the MOT was coming up in January, and at that point I knew when it goes for that MOT, I'm going to take the car away. So what had happened also, because that car hadn't been driven for months, the battery went and died in it, which was good. I was like, good, he can't drive it, the battery's dead. And I was like, I can't deal with it this weekend, because I'm not local. I'm out seeing Aiden's parents on that weekend, but I will replace it the following weekend. We'll get the new battery in it. Dad couldn't wait that long, as it turns out, because he got into his head that there was a medical appointment happening the very next day, and that it had to be addressed immediately, which happened to be was it like 7:30 at night, when it was dark in the end of November. And he's trying to take the battery out of the car. So I'm getting panic texts, panic voicemails from Dad going on about the car, and he's lost the torch and I can't get him. Mum's going, I can't get him inside, you've got to get Aiden down here to help. I'm like, Aiden is in the toilets, I cannot drop everything right now. And I ended up speaking to Dad on the phone, and the first time he sounded like he was crying over the phone. I'd never heard my dad like that upset, and he actually never used the phone again after that point as well, after he rang me. And he was like, I'm sorry, I'm so useless, and he was getting really upset. I was like, Dad, there's no medical appointments, you don't have to worry about it, I've got transport booked anyway, and it's 2 weeks away, so it's okay. This particular appointment you're thinking is happening, it's like a week or two away, and I've already arranged transport, you don't need the car, it's okay, calm. But that was sort of the beginning of the end. So we got the new battery in it. Then he drove it once in the rain, because he didn't want to walk down to the paper shop in the rain. So he drove it down there, and then it never moved again until the MOT in January of 2026. So we've got to, I'm like, okay, as soon as that has that MOT, that car has to go. It's going to come on my drive. We've actually had it from new since 2004. It's a Mark 1 Ford Focus. Really, really good car. It still had a lot of life and potential left in it at that point. So anyway, so we've got January. Mum's had a fall. She's had the ear infection. She's got the beginnings of the chest infection. I've got to get that car to its MOT. We decide to get an Uber from our house down to my parents. We open the car door, and we're like, that is we couldn't believe what we'd seen on the inside of the car, because he'd driven it that one time 3 months earlier in the rain. The entire inside of the car had grown mold. I'm going to put some pictures up actually so you can see it. It's really, really gross. So the steering wheel was covered, the seats were covered, dashboard, it was just mold, because it had got wet. So it also wouldn't start, the battery was died again. So we spent about 40 minutes while doing the other bits and bobs I had to do for my parents, like shopping, meal planning, all this rubbish, leaving it on charge. We then try again after 40 minutes, it still won't turn over, even though it's been sitting on the car charger for 40 minutes. So at this point, it's like, we can't keep wasting our time. We've got to get this place, got to get it over to its MOT this afternoon. So we go all the way, we get another Uber all the way back home to pick up the van, drive all the way back to my parents' house to try and jumpstart the car off the van, which is what we should have done in the first place. But we didn't think the battery would be flat because it was pretty much a brand new battery that just gone in. So we jumped the van, we jumped the car with the van. It turns over and smoke billows out absolutely everywhere. It's like, it looks and smells like it's about to catch fire. Just as I go to turn it off, there's a massive pop, and we think it was the cam belt or the fan belt or something went along with the water cooler or something with the gushes of smoke. And I was like, I literally just like swore out loud, and at that point, because I was like, I was already so run down, still ill. And at that point, it was just after that, I think, I then caught COVID for the second time. I'd only been recovered for 4 weeks from the last bout of COVID I'd had where I was coughing up blood, and now I've got COVID for the second time. And simultaneously, once again, I'm in face mask. I'm still having to look out for my parents. I've got to get I've now got to get rid of this car that's broken down. At least we could cancel the MOT because we don't need that anymore. But it was sad because that car, I remember our travels in it from child, because we had it since 2004. It was a really, really good car, only 60,000 miles on the clock. But yeah, no, just not good now. What happened when we did finally get it towed, what had happened was it clearly been leaking because the boot was completely filled with water where the spare wheel was, and then of course with all the sun and stuff, it was condensating inside, and that got into the cam belt or whatever it was that went pop, and that was the end of that. I was like, okay, at least I don't have to take the car away from Dad. It's blown up, it's an end of the era. He's accepted the fact that it's blown up. I've videoed the fact of it with the flame, the smoke coming out of it, to show him of this is what has happened. And at that point he became very accepting, and he thought everything had gone at that point. He thought his motorbike had gone, he thought the half-built kit car in the garage had gone, as well as this car. He thought everything had gone at that point. And he also seemed to, like I'd thought would happen, he shut down from everything. He lost it. It was gone. His usefulness, the thing that gave him purpose, even though he wasn't driving, because it was there, he felt okay. Losing that, he fell off a cliff, I think, emotionally. He really shut down. He went from he used to say, living is better than the alternative. That stopped. The same with Mum. She wanted, I don't know if you may have known about it, but purple forms, which is do not resuscitate forms, and she got the GP to sign up one of those, which is sad. Whereas Dad always wanted to be, bring me back. Now he's not saying that, although he was very against he didn't want to sign a purple form or anything. He wanted to be brought back, but then he became less caring about that side of things anymore because he'd lost his purpose in a sense. So the car's gone. Mum's still got chest infections. I've got COVID. Dad's got blood tests coming up. So we've got to get him to these blood tests. And it's a bit of a pain because the first time I get him there, I've tried to make him drink. It hasn't gone well. They can't get the blood out of him at all. They end up sending us away, and we have to wait another week to do it again. So again, I'm asking my stepdaughter's grandmother to help us with this because she's offered. She's like, yeah. She likes having useful purpose as well. So for her, it was actually, I think maybe she quite liked being needed in that way, to help give back in that sense. But eventually, as well, what the lasting power attorneys, the other two, my half brother and his wife, had done behind the scenes to try and make life easier. They've actually booked medical appointments for my parents at the same day with like 20-minute intervals for the GP appointment and the blood tests at the same place. And I was like, oh wow, I've got to manage 2 Alzheimer patients, with myself, with my crutches, and I'm not feeling well either, because I've still got this cold COVID thing, whatever the hell is going on. And I'm having to manage both of them. Fortunately, the volunteer travel people that I used, I spoke to them about it on the phone, and they actually, they were brilliant. They came into the waiting room of the surgery, and they would sit with one of my parents when I took the other one for an appointment. Then we'd switch, and then I'd give that parent back to the volunteer person, and I'd take the other parent in for their appointment, because you couldn't leave one by themselves unattended, and I didn't really want to have to try and squish them. I don't know, I could have brought them in to have both of them into the GP consulting room, I suppose, but it was... Anyway, so it was things like that where it's like, yeah, if people had their marbles and they could keep care of each other and walk and have better mobility by themselves and not be relying on me to actually be an additional walking stick for them, then yes, you can manage. But if you're having to micromanage 2 adults who are basically children, you know, it was like, how... They didn't seem to, at this point, this is when I then started going, okay, I'm going to give them really ridiculously detailed, step-by-step, like, rundowns of what's going on while I'm there, and sending them these massive essays of, this is everything I'm doing every single trip, just to make them aware that, look, this is becoming impossible to maintain during winter with my own health issues, which are so massively affected by temperature. So really cold weather, I cannot function. My feet, my extremities, they go blue, purple. I cannot regulate my own body temperature, which causes swelling in my joints and additional issues. The same is true for summer as well. The hot temperatures, you've got the exact same, but with the extra, the dizziness added in, because I'm still undergoing diagnoses for POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, but trying to get referred to someone who can diagnose it has been a 5-year struggle, and I'm still not at the end of it. But I do now have the name of a private consultation dude, words, who can now probably diagnose it. But again, it's having the time and energy to then make the appointment, to pay privately to get this diagnosis, to hopefully get the right medication. I've got to have more mental leeway and space to be able to tackle that on top of all my other issues. So I finally get Dad to have these blood tests. So we're now, all this car drama, the towing of the car, all of that's happened March. It's my birthday week. We've also got, with everything going on, I'd started looking at nursing homes at the beginning of 2026, because I was like, Mum's got her cardiac surgery, her pacemaker replacement surgery happening this summer. Because originally I was planning, before Mum's diagnosis and everything, I was planning to move back in to care for her while this was happening. But the way things were going, there was like, I am not going to be able to manage this. They've got to be in a care home where they're in a sensible situation where she's not going to pull her stitches by doing something stupid. Because at this point as well, I'd got, you know, the cleaners in, but Mum's saying, I can't cope, I can't do this, I can't do that. I try and increase the hours of the cleaner. The cleaner is from a company called Chit Chat and Chores, where they're specifically to help with domestic tasks for elderly. So it's more of a companion service. They can do errands, they can get sandwiches, they can take you places. You know, it's sort of like a befriending service, but with chores thrown in. So I was trying to increase her hours, because Mum's saying, I cannot fold the sheets, I can't do this, I can't do that. So I said to the company, you know, can you increase the hours, and can you stay until all the washing is done, dusted, put away? And even then, my mother was sending the help away. She was clearly getting confused with paying them, so I started doing everything via invoice that I could do remotely. Rather than this cash in hand, where I was having to get her out cash every week to give to the cleaner. So instead I was doing it through bank transfer. Same with the gardeners as well. She couldn't pay them anymore, so I was doing it via invoicing. Which again is a little bit more for me to do each time. Got to remember to pay the bills, got to remember to talk to people and tell them what to do. And then, you know, the cleaner started messaging me directly. to tell me what was going on. I was here from this time to this time. Your mum got getting very agitated, asking me multiple times when I was going to leave. Eventually, Mum did adjust to having her in for longer, but always complained about, oh, it's so tiring. It's like, because we gave her the option of, we can split it over a couple days if you don't mind having a different person in on the other day. But she was like, no, I don't want someone else in, don't want more disruption, don't want someone I don't know. So it was literally just this one cleaner who was only available on Mondays who could come and do this stuff. So, you know, Mum wouldn't accept the help, she wouldn't accept the carers. We tried I'd qualified for 75 hours of in-home respite, so they would send a carer there for hours a day to chat with them and do stuff with them. That didn't go well, and Mum was like, I don't know what to make her do, she just sits here, I don't know what to do with her. So that ended up just falling flat. It turned out the woman wasn't actually doing it. Turned out my mum was right, she wasn't doing anything. She was supposed to be able to do little domestic tasks to help because she's a carer. She wasn't doing that, and she was scamming the company by charging them more hours than she was working from us. So that was my first disastrous experience with help that had been arranged via the GP so that I could try and get some break. But at the same time, it wasn't really going to help, because what was really struggling with me the most was the medical appointments, the admin, the keeping on top of the prescriptions, chasing the pharmacies, making sure they've got their doorstep boxes, communicating with doctors and specialists and consultants, getting them to these urgent last minute appointments where I've got to drop everything. And it's just, this isn't the break I need. What I really need is someone to take over the medical, just even if it's just literally just all the medical admin. Because with my health issues, I spent most of my life in and out of hospitals since the age of 6 years old. For me, there is severe anxiety and trauma associated with hospitals because of failed surgeries, anaesthetics not working, doctors not understanding. You become scared of the people who are there who are supposed to try to help you when you've got chronic illness, where you're dismissed and medical gaslighting and there's nothing wrong with you. And you worry with every single medical appointment of having to explain and be believed. You have, most people, they go to a doctor, you don't have to worry about, is the doctor going to believe your symptoms? But when you live with invisible chronic illnesses that aren't easily diagnosable, people just assume that you know, you must be making it up, there's nothing wrong with you, there's nothing on the scans, we can't do this, that or the other, go away, try meditation, eat healthier, exercise more. Whereas when you're getting told repeatedly to push through and keep going, you inevitably, with chronic illness, you can't, and you crash and you burn, which is essentially what ended up happening while pushing through the illness from the Shingella infection that has been ongoing for a year. So I get my dad in for his blood appointment. I'm still looking at nursing homes. I've seen three at this point. 2 of them were absolutely horrific. There's no way I'd put my parents in them. The people there were so far gone, screaming, smelled bad. I was like, no. There was one that had really good care, but it looked kind of run down and shabby, but the care there was excellent. But I knew my parents, well, specifically my mother, wouldn't be happy in that kind of rundown situation. She wants the glamour, the luxurious. She's happy to move at this point into a care home because, you know, she keeps saying she can't cope. She can't cook. She's burnt herself on the oven multiple times. When my brother was coming down to see her, she got out a fancy plate from a cupboard, broke her finger. I, of course, had to take her to A&E to deal with the broken finger. You know, she wasn't coping. At that point, she realised she wasn't coping and she was happy to leave. So I thought, yay, at least one of them is happy to leave, whereas my dad was no, we're doomed, I tell you, doomed, and repeatedly saying they're going to take me away and I'd rather die in this house, I'm never leaving. So I knew I was going to have to force my dad somehow. So having the upcoming surgery for my mother and her pacemaker was the perfect excuse of, you need to be in respite care when you have this surgery. That was the reasoning for getting them into the care home. If we didn't have that surgery coming up, there's no way, I don't think I could have got my dad to get there. So we knew there was going to be problems. We were talking to the community matron. She was saying we will need to get a mental capacity assessment done on dad. If he fails it, then legally you can act, he can't go home, you're in charge, basically. But social services, which has to do the mental capacity assessment, is so packed up excuse me, that the wait is going to be, I don't know how long. So they said, what we'll do, and I thought they'd made the referral to social services at that point anyway. They said, we're going to try and get the mental health team to do an assessment. It won't be a legal one, but it will know where we're standing and should speed up social services if they know what they're working with. Apparently. So we did get that done. My dad did score a 10 out of 30, which is a failing score on that. But of course that assessment wasn't done by social services. It's not legally binding in any way. But it gave us an idea of where we were at that point with him. So I finally get dad to his blood tests. They finally get the blood from him. It's a Friday afternoon. To be continued. Sorry, the dog was barking at our workman. We're currently having a work done in the garden and our bathrooms. So anyway, my half-brother and his wife actually took over the care home search. So they went and viewed 7 and found one that they thought would be more suitable for mum. It's not too far away from me. The reason they took over the search at all was because I'd gotten to the point of desperation where I was literally looking at anything that could potentially be right, regardless of how far away it was. So they turned around with one of the ones that I told them I got a viewing for. And they were like, that is way too far away. We'll never be able to just pop in or do anything. And I'm kind of thinking, well, it doesn't really matter because you're hardly ever there anyway. But anyway, so they fortunately they took over the search and they found something that was closer and more nearby. The day after Dad's blood tests, they had planned to come and pick my parents up to take them to view 2 of these homes. It was very fortunate that they turned up when they did because they were able to intercept a phone call that my father was on. So my father passed them the phone straight away. And it was an emergency 111 doctor who had said, look, the blood tests are severe. You need to be, your thyroid has basically failed. Your levels are so low that you are in danger of dying. Basically, you may die in your sleep is essentially what it boiled down to. You have to be on this new medication straight away. It cannot wait till Monday. So that was one that was very good that my brother intercepted that phone call, and the other thing was then that escalated because they sent the prescription to the superstore that was quite near my house, which has a pharmacy in it. So the issue was my brother and his wife then took them to view nursing homes, and then they were going to pick up this prescription on the way back, right? They got there and they said, oh, it's going to be another 20 minutes wait. We're going to take your parents home. Can you go get them medication? I turn up there 20 minutes later and they cannot issue this medication because it hasn't been sent properly by the emergency doctors. There's no issue code on it. They cannot print the prescription to be able to issue the prescription. They need a paper copy of it. Okay, right, what happens next? Right, so you're back on to... Fortunately, my brother had got the name of the man, you know, the doctor that had rung, because there was no record of it whatsoever when you dialed 111 and you spoke to them. It hadn't been on the system. It hadn't been logged. There was no indication. Yes, they saw the prescription gone through, but there was no indication that anything had happened, there was supposed to be a doctor was supposed to come out to do a face-to-face appointment with my parents, with me present, so that we could understand, you know, how to take the medication, because the medication was a lot more complicated than anything else he'd been on. That didn't happen. So I'm like, well, what's going on? And they're like, they don't know either. Someone's going to ring you. Someone's going to ring you. And I message mum and I go like, if anyone rings, let me know immediately, because they're supposed to ring me. If they ring you by mistake, let me know. So time goes on. I'm sitting by my phone. I'm waiting for the phone calls. It's back and forth. I ring up every few hours going, what's happening? And at midnight, I finally give up and I go to sleep, because it's like, there's nothing I can do. Absolutely nothing I can do if no one's going to ring me back, because they're saying... So anyway, I rang back the following morning, 8 a.m, and they said, oh, well, it's on the system that a doctor went out and saw you. I was like, no, they didn't. Or someone spoke to you. And I was like, no one did. And I messaged mum. I was like, did anyone ring? And she was like, no one rang. No one did anything. I'm like, well, look, you're going to have to send someone out. I've got to have a paper prescription of this. You know, we're already 24 hours on, almost, from where we were starting. So when they said you could die in your sleep if you don't have this medication straight away, and yet we've had to wait now 24 hours to get this life-saving medication because no one's ringing me back or giving me a prescription form. So anyway, it turned out days later, I found out the whole story of they had rung mum. Mum had answered the phone. Mum had spoken to the doctors on the phone, and she had turned around and said, do not come round to the house because it's bedtime, we're going to sleep. That was like at 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, whereas I'd stayed up till midnight that night waiting for a phone call that never came because it had already happened and Mum had forgotten it had happened, but then remembered and then told me about it. Anyway, eventually the doctor did turn up that morning, didn't tell me they were coming, but did ring me off my mother's phone to give me detailed instructions on how to take the medication. At which point I went down to my parents that morning. I picked up the prescription. My father had already taken his morning dose of pills, which was almost kind of a little bit of a pain because there has to be a window before you can take the new medication. And I was like, well, I've got to get back before their lunch because we finally set up Meals on Wheels for them because the cooking situation had gone so out of hand with it had gotten to the point where I was having to order takeaways 4 days out of the week for them because they just could not even cook ready meals. And that is my phone ringing, so to be continued again. So anyway, eventually, I'm back now. Hello. Eventually we did get the prescription, got him taking it. It was incredibly complicated to take, which meant for the next couple of days, I had to be sure that I was down there really early in the morning before he got up so that I could time the intervals between the medications exactly. Because this had become an issue, his medications in general, because at the beginning of the year, I got rid of about 40 boxes of medication, most of which had been unopened. He gets new medications every month, so the fact that there were so many boxes meant it hadn't been taken correctly. And it turned out there was one medication for the osteoarthritis in his spine that he hadn't been taking at all for an entire year, and I'd forgotten about it. So when I'd switched him over to Dorset boxes, he made a big fuss about that but I take my medication. It's far more complicated to take it now. I'm like, all you have to do is open the day little container box. You know, it's a lot easier than having to take it out of the packet and work out how many of each one you're supposed to be taking, which clearly he obviously couldn't do at all. But mum had also tried to medicate him as well. And one of these medications you've got to be taking sitting down for half an hour without getting up or moving around. So I'd been administrating it wrong as well when I'd been trying to do it because, of course, you can't really get him to stay sitting down. Mum then took over and started doing it wrong as well because of her Alzheimer's. And then she started obsessing about Dad's pills to the point where we did have, at one point I had to blow up at both of them. And I was like, both of you sit down. I'm dealing with the blimmin' pills. I was already on the phone to the pharmacy to deal with the pills, but they were back and forth to the pill boxes constantly to the point of, oh, Jesus Christ. So the medication things were out of hand, the cooking was out of hand, the cleaning was out of hand, the garden was out of hand, the invoices were out of hand, the plumbing work at that house was out of hand, and it just escalated to the point of complete burnout and exhaustion on my part. So we got him on the right medication. It was fortunate that week we'd already set things in motion to have a care company start, with twice a day visits to help with actually at that point it was just to deal with just Dad's medication and him, because he'd stopped bathing, he'd stopped changing his clothes and washing, so he needed encouragement. But at the same time, I was getting told by the other lasting power attorneys that, oh, it's not the carer's responsibility to make him bathe, it's your responsibility as his daughter. And I was like, no, that's impossible. Like, I can't force my 70-year-old father into a bath when, you know, he was, I don't know, I'm not going to deal with the anger and the upset of me trying to force him to bathe. All I can do is gently encourage and while I'm there. But of course, he likes bathing in the evenings, not during the day. So it was like, well, right now? Why do you want me to take a bath right now? It's not bath time. So it's, even the carers had trouble with it, because he'd turn around and say, no. And then we also had issues with that care company, that didn't go smoothly at all. That became a whole nother type of stress of chasing them, of why didn't you turn up? Why is no one here? Why haven't this been done? You'd find out by looking at the app and the information on the app rather than being told about things that had happened. So I was checking the app multiple times a day after each visit to see the little updates of what had gone wrong, like that day. It's like they couldn't get any hot water. So instead of ringing me, I could have boosted it on my phone. They'd have had water in 10 minutes. They got out multiple kettles from around the house, filled them with boiling water and started filling the bath with kettle water instead of just turning on their messaging me so I could have switched on the hot water. That's the problem of having, because of our hot water and everything was on the same system. The hot water powers like the radiators in the house, so the heating comes on, which is why I never had the hot water on during the day. But now the carers are wanting to try and get Dad to bath during the day, so there was an issue with the hot water. You know, I smoothed it out, but again, if they had just said something to me, I wouldn't have had to find out on the app that they were doing something so ridiculous. It was like you'd see messages on the app of could not dish out medication because box was empty. I was like, wait, what? Why isn't there a new box? The new box had been delivered like an hour after they left. Days later, that medication that was supposed to be once a week still hadn't been taken. It's like there's a new box that I put right there, right next to the old box, and it was the same carer multiple days in a row for that morning. And they were like, oh, well, you should have messaged us about it. I was like, well, you guys didn't message us. That there was just the communication on it was dreadful. At one point they didn't turn up for about 5 hours, so Dad, it was fortunate I was there that morning, so I did all of Dad's medication. And then when they did turn up, they turned up, didn't have anything to do, went away, and then the next carer turned up an hour later. Or you'd have multiple carers turning up at the exact same time because they hadn't checked their own calendars. It's like they didn't know what they were doing. So I was getting constant messages at this point from my mother because she's very not patient, likes things doing at a certain time, certain order, routines, and this is conflicting, causing her upset. I was having to deal with it. I was having to chase the care companies. It was what was supposed to be a lift of some of the burdens wasn't really a lift of some of the burdens. And that was kind of common with everything. It's like, yeah, get carers in to mind them, but there's no one there to do any of the admin tasks, any of the organisation. The carers can't actually communicate with the GPs. You have to give consent for them to even be in there. They then can't share the information from you, so you have to talk to the GPs separately as well to then find out what was happening. And I was like, there's no point going down that route. That seems like even more chaos than me just pushing through my symptoms and turning up to the appointments and talking to the doctor there and then. Because then I'm talking on behalf of Mum as well. I know what symptoms she's dealing with. She can't articulate stuff to the GPs. I'm having to be medical advocate for her. So there was a lot of, like, how do you ease the burdens when you've also got two parents who are very heavily in denial and not wanting to accept the help, because in their brains, they're independent, they should be able to do it. Why are there other people in my space? The worst thing, again, was also the smoking that had increased over this time of them living at that house, because, of course, boredom, I can't remember what they're doing. and they were just chain smoking it. They were chain smoking it in the house. They were chain smoking it in the house with fan heaters on, the doors closed. It became a hot box, and it was absolutely disgusting. My husband and I are smokers ourselves, and even we struggled to tolerate being in that tiny closed off utility room with all that smoke and the fan heaters going. And it was just, this is a fire hazard waiting to happen, hence why all the fire inspection stuff went on, and the new fire alarms and the safety blankets and the changing of everything. But the problem was as well with this endless plumbing issues that were happening every 2 months. One of the plumber had to start really early on one morning, which of course woke Dad up. He had the look of, who the hell are you? I'm going to murder you for being in my house. It was fortunate that my husband was there and he recognised my husband, so he kind of just then ignored the plumber that he has met multiple times over the course of the last few years. We have the same guy all the time because his grandmother actually had vascular dementia, so he is very understanding of the confusion and the repetitive questions. But Mum wouldn't sit still. She was back and forth trying to climb over the worker while he's on the floor trying to put valves and stuff on the radiator, getting in the way, not sitting still. Dad then started smoking in the house while the plumber is trying to work on the ground, and yet there's smoke everywhere. It's like technically that is very illegal. You cannot smoke in a property when you've got workmen there because it is against the law. But it's like you can't tell him. You try to, and he gave my husband the death glare of "Don't you dare tell me what to do in my house" kind of thing. But you could see it in his eyes of like, don't mess with me kind of thing. This is my bloody house. I'll do what I bloody want sort of attitude going on there. Because they can't understand that what they're doing isn't actually appropriate behaviour anymore. So in all this chaos and fixing of the downstairs toilet that caused an additional flood in the utility, at the same time he's trying to do a boiler service for us. Part of the boiler goes missing because Mum is tidying as he's doing stuff. He had to put part of the boiler down to deal with the flood that had happened from the repaired toilet, which had overflowed and the pipes weren't connected, so it had just leaked everywhere due to the poor plumbing and installation from 30 years ago. And this part of the boiler goes missing. So he's hunting all over the place for this boiler. We're going through bins, we're going under the kit car, we look through the garage, look through the toilet, looked outside, cannot find this part. He has to end up making like a 40-minute round trip just to get a replacement part for this boiler, which he's just lost. Which I think we all think Mum somehow cleaned it, put it somewhere, had no idea where on earth it ended up. It's the only explanation for that, really. So that was kind of like the chaos leading up to what inevitably turned into the care home move. So at this point I was like, anywhere you put them is going to be better than trying to manage all of this, because at that point from March I'd been on call non-stop without a break for 12 days straight. And it didn't stop with then. It was like multiple times a week, if not every day, up until the 4th of May, which was move-in date for the care home. But just getting them to that care home was in itself exhausting. So Dad had this song stuck in his head, which I actually looked up. And oh my God, was that a dark song to listen to. But it starts with, "They're coming to take me away, ha 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 ho." Those nice young men in those long white coats. "They're coming to take me away, off to their happy farm." It's a really, really dark, unpleasant song when you listen to Google it. I can't remember what it's actually called, but "They're coming to take me away." Just put those in as lyrics and you'll get the whole of it. But it's a really, really dark song, and this was stuck in his head on repeat continuously for about 3 or 4 months. This endless song, "They're coming to take me away, haha, they're coming to take me away, they're coming to take me away," and going on about it. And I was like, no, it won't be nice white men, it'll be us, it'll be me, I'll be doing it. Which seemed to actually calm him down, that it's not going to be strangers coming to take him away. But he knew, that we were talking about nursing homes, that it was coming, that he probably wasn't going to get a choice and he was going to get forced out of that home. And amazingly, he went with it. He actually caused 0 problems in the end. So all the worry about mental health, capacity assessments, all of this, it didn't seem like that bad an issue at the right at the beginning, well, right at the move part, I should say, it seemed to go kind of smoothly. What I was not counting on was my mother at all. After being so pro-move, she did a massive 180. So just getting them to the home was a pain because of going through packing up my mum's stuff was to try and get the clothes. We ended up having to go through absolutely every single drawer because she kept opening and closing the same drawers that we'd been through over and over and over again. And it was like, right, we're going to have to go through absolutely everything then because she won't leave these drawers alone that have still got stuff in. I'm going to have to just focus on, anyway. And so that took hours. I did have help from my friend with that one. She put a lot of stuff in the donate, which she is now asking for, which I don't have because it got donated. So that was a bit of a mistake. I should never have let those bags get donated straight away. I should have held on to them and gone through them. But again, I didn't realise just quite how bad mum was until she got into that nursing home. So she tried to do the same with dad, at which point the next day I'd banished her. I was like, just let me get on and sort out dad's clothes by myself. So that one was sort of all right. And then the following morning, she tried to pack like medications and other stuff. And like I'd had an extensive list of everything. I was very well prepared. But still, it was like she packed shampoo, no conditioner, but no shampoo. Half of her medication's missing. And it was just, whoops, that was wrong. That shouldn't have gone in there. There we go. Right, is that right as well? I'm going wrong. No, right. Can't multitask and talk at the same time. So, packing was difficult and that morning was chaotic and somehow my medications got mixed up in there. It's like, my medications, I haven't lived in that at your house for like over a year. Why was my medications even there? And all I can think is when they ran out of my dad's medication with the carers from that care company, they'd gone through the cupboards where the medication was kept, found an old box of mine right at the top at the back that I'd forgotten was even there, and because it was the same type of medication, they were dishing it out to dad even though the medication was out of date. That is where I think how that box got mixed in with all of my parents' medical stuff, because I was like, well, I didn't put it there. But yet it's out, it's there, so clearly someone's found this old box of medication that I hadn't cleared away of my stuff and used it. But anyway, to be continued on the story. So part 2, when I come back to it, is the care home dramas, because that has been great fun. Cool. See you in a bit. Okay, so care home trip. So before the care home thing, I forgot to touch on my mother's behaviour leading up to this, starting from, again, November 2025 was, again, when we had the problem with the car battery. It was sort of around here then, along with the financial advisor visit, that mum's behaviour became, went from agitated to angry and almost aggressive. So there'd be times where I'd be just needing anything. Like I went to try and get the lasting power of attorney forms out because I needed to show them to something at the time. And my mum was just always angry and always directing it at dad at that point. So if she got agitated about something, she'd immediately yell at dad of, you're always in the blimmin' way, well, slightly more choice words. When all he was doing at that point was standing by the radiator to try and keep warm, because what we've discovered with the thyroid was it makes you feel the cold really bad when you've got an underactive thyroid going on. So it wasn't his fault. He didn't ever know what he'd actually done wrong. He was just standing in the wrong place and being yelled at for it. And it got to the point where, because mum's agitation, she was up, she was down, and she was constantly like, people were always in her way just because she was constantly up, down the whole time. And then it was anger and aggression that was mostly directed at dad. So there were times where my husband and I luckily we were there to like intervene, to try and like calm things down a bit, because, you know, dad would be really upset. You know, he wouldn't say it, but you could see it in his face of just, he'd get out of the way and he'd be sheepish and he'd be looking around and like, he just absolutely had no idea what he'd done wrong. It was very, very sad. And there was things like mum complaining about him constantly, and he never eats, he doesn't do this, he doesn't get up, he never tips the ashtray. She was just complaining about him all the time, and then you started getting what became stuck in a loop for him was, "We're doomed, I tell you, Mannering, doomed," which is a quote from Dad's army. And then he'd go into the story about his Aunt Marjorie and being the Air Force warden of Bognor Regis, and we ended up we'd end up finishing the story for him, because the end of that story was always, "Put that light out," because that's what my great Aunt Marjorie used to say, was to tell people to put the lights out during the war. So Mum's behaviour was affecting Dad. Dad was spiralling. His health was going down the toilet, and Mum. So we're now in the end of June, and so far this year she has had 6 chest infections and 2 ear infections and 2 falls, all in the last 6 months. So it's been an awful lot. So after the incident with Dad and his thyroid, and the incidents with the 111 phone calls that didn't come to me and went to my parents' house, I then went and I changed their contact number with the doctor's surgery, every individual hospital, every consultant, pretty much everything. I put everything to my phone number, because there were also instances where Mum would be telling me, "Oh, there's an appointment that's come through. They rang me and told me it was at this address." And then a week or so later, I'd book in the travel for it. A week or so later, I'd get the form, the hospital letter, and it was at a completely different location. Same date, same time, but location was different. So I was constantly then having to ring up the travel people where they need a week's notice to be able to help you, and then having to last minute change the destination of where we were going, which they didn't really like doing. So that was another reason for getting the numbers changed, so that all the medical stuff then came to me. And over this time as well, my own anxieties were absolutely out of control with it, because of being on call, because of wondering what's coming next. Every time my phone rang, I'm doing a lot better now, but I would scream. I literally, it would just startle me so much to the point I would scream, and you'd get your chest racing, heart pounding, everything. And the same problem was happening with text messages, WhatsApp notifications, anything, to the point of or just the vibration of my phone going off, and it's like some stupid like Facebook post or something, that just the sound effect and the vibration of the phone was causing immediate panic attacks, because I'm on call the whole time of what's going to be next, So that was very difficult, and it wasn't actually until I got I was referred to the pain specialists, which I've been through many times, but it wasn't until about 6 or 7 months of, it was like the 3rd call I'd had with the pain specialists over the course of the year or whatever, and they turned around and they actually said to me that your nervous system needs at least 6 months to recover, because it's in a state of high alert so much. 6 months. And there's finally someone has actually said, you actually need time to recover, because for a year of just battling with my own health and that Shigella infection and then the 2 bouts of COVID, everything in my body was screaming for me to stop, but I couldn't stop. And it was, I don't know, hearing that, finally having a doctor take notice as well, because I felt like I'd been screaming at the top of my lungs for ever since actually my uncle had passed away, of I need help, I can't cope. But at the same time, you do everything you're told, you do all the counselling and CBT and do this, that and the other, work on your mental health, take time for yourself, look after yourself, do this, that and the other. You can't when you've got chronic illness on top of caring responsibilities. You can't pace yourself, you can't risk doing an activity that could deplete your energy and then getting an emergency phone call, and then you've got an empty tank to deal with an emergency. So I'd gotten to the point from when I got that Shigella infection in June, July of 2025, everything fell down around me, and I was sleeping. That's all I was doing throughout the afternoons, days. I was either sleeping or I was in a state of complete and utter panic, physical exhaustion, mental fatigue, brain fog. That became actually quite concerning because my phone ended up in the washing machine. After spending a long time searching around the house going, where on earth is my phone? And why is that washing machine making that noise going clonk, clonk, clonk? My phone was in the washing machine. I went out and I left the front door to my house wide open at least 3 times. I left the hob on for hours at a time because I'd forgotten to turn it off. I would stand in front of the fridge going, I have no idea why I opened this, and then realise eventually that I actually meant to open the cutlery drawer next to the fridge, not the fridge at all. And I would lose track of conversations partway through, as in I was completely paying attention, and then I've got absolutely no idea what the person's talking about. I'm like, what were we just saying? What was the last sentence? Because I have no idea what we're talking about. Mid-sentence, I'd lose all of it, the whole conversation gone. And I'd be losing my phone and going, where on earth is my phone? At one point, I knew I had to get down to my parents' house. I knew I had to order an Uber. We don't have a landline. Everything's connected to my phone. I can't find my phone. I've got to get down to my parents' house. So I wasted about 40 minutes hunting for my phone. And it wasn't until I figured out how to ring my partner from my iPad to tell him to ring my phone for me. Because I couldn't figure out how to ring my phone from my iPad. And then it was actually in a drawer with all the batteries. I don't even remember opening that drawer. I don't know how I got in with all the batteries, but it was in with all the batteries. And it was like cooking. It was just like, I can't remember the next step of what I'm supposed to be doing. What ingredient am I supposed to be getting? And just complete and utter, could not run my own life, my own house, and just normal domestic chores. Any admin task was causing utter panic, to the point where it was just compressing in my throat. I couldn't breathe. There was a brick on my chest, which was aggravating all the stomach issues. And of course, with the stomach issues that still existed from the Shigella infection, there was constantly, you try and do any kind of task that was for my parents, and immediately it caused just blind panic. And I'm just going, why? These are the things that are so easy. I used to be able to do them in my sleep. Why are the simplest tasks causing this amount of extreme panic to the point where I can't function? I also can't rest because I can't switch my mind off, and I'm on call all the time as well, so I'm on edge waiting for the next thing to happen. So I wasn't in a great state, but hearing the doctors say you need 6 months, it was like, at least now I've got an idea of what's going on, and starting to look up things on Facebook and carer support, and suddenly every single symptom I've had was right there under the carer burnout. All of it, the brain fog, the chronic pain, the not sleeping, the anxiety, the stomach issues, the nausea, absolutely everything that I've been investigating for the last year through multiple departments of the NHS system, and yet it's here, it's registered, it's on the NHS website, all of these symptoms along with care fatigue, and yet not one single doctor over the course of the last 6 years had ever stopped to say, this isn't just about the people with Alzheimer's that it affects, the primary carer as well. And a lot of it, when you start reading into the statistics and everything, a lot of the times the Alzheimer's patient can actually outlive the carer. So I was actually getting to the point where I was actually starting to feel like I'm going to end up in hospital and collapse very soon, because I don't physically, mentally know how much more strain I can take. After my father nearly dying in March with this thyroid issue, that was when I started living on literally only 4 hours of sleep for months until this last week or so. And that was just, you were too exhausted to ever function or form thoughts, words, want to do anything for yourself, social activities. And you felt guilty if you didn't do anything. So if, you know, looking at it going, I've got to put the hoover around. I can't put the hoover around. I don't feel well enough to put the hoover around, but I'm going to feel guilty and beat myself up about it for the next week and still not do it. But it was the same with absolutely every single little task. I just couldn't let go of the urgency of everything has to be done right now, and I can't do any of it. So that was the state I'd gotten in, to the point of any care home will do at this point, because I need to stop. I burnt myself out. So I thought getting them into the care home would be respite. Like immediately I was expecting to go in there and finally be able to get a break, and that isn't actually ended up being what happened at all. So problems arose literally from day one that I took them to the home. Going through and packing up my father's stuff, I realised he has got like 2 pairs of underwear. Where on earth have all of his underwear gone? So every time there was a tiny little hole in his underwear, Mum had been taking the underwear and putting them to the side to use as rags and dusters, but not telling anyone, so he was running out of underwear and he only had 3 pairs of underwear left. And then when I went to pack up like his wash bags and things, it was, you know, his toothbrush had like 5 bristles on it. It's like, how could you even have been cleaning his teeth doing that? You know, these things I didn't think to really check, because I know my mother's stuff, but not my father's personal hygiene habits. Mum I've helped in baths and showers for years anyway, but not my dad, so I'd missed doing these things, and the guilt on the fact that I very nearly missed how unwell Dad was, that was crucifying at the beginning of the year, because literally I'd been so ill, so concerned with my own health, Mum's health. I hadn't seen and ended up neglecting how bad Dad's health was, because of course they don't articulate how bad they're feeling when you're in that state. It's like dealing with a child. So the guilt over that was pretty horrific, and also the guilt of moving them into a care home when I knew my father just did not want to go at all. I knew it was going to be hard. And then there was a guilt in that of, is this actually right? Would he be better off at home? Yes, he probably could survive at home a bit longer, but at the same time, you know, Mum and Dad, they have such different complex needs that what works for one won't work for the other, and it's just not working, with Mum sending care away and complaining about carers coming in and the times they're coming in, and worrying that they haven't dished out your father's pills, except you go there, you check they have, because you can see in the Dorset box that today's pills were gone. So it was the constant back and forth of that. So the care home was the right move. I did come to terms with that quite quickly after the guilt part subsided. But it was also seeing those other homes and seeing the other residents screaming and stuff. That's when I started researching Alzheimer's and the final stages and what was to come. And it also gave me a timescale, which up until this now, I didn't realize the 7 stages of Alzheimer's each have like a specific like length of time in which you'll suffer in that stage before progressing to the next one, as a rough estimation based on age. But having that look and working out that my dad's at the beginning of stage 6, my mum at that point was well into stage 5, but it's she's decreased rapidly. I mean, she's catching up with Dad just so much quicker than I expected at all with her, because of all these infections. It then triggers a decline in mental capacity every time you get these infections. So the number one killer of Alzheimer's patients is usually pneumonia or undiagnosed infections. Bollocks, this is the wrong colour that I'm putting in there. Damn, how many did I put in wrong? Quite a lot. Okay, now we have to pick this stuff up. Oh, no, those ones are right. Those can stay. Oh, it's so frustrating when this happens with diamond painting. Right. You guys come out. You guys come out. You. Okay, so right, we've cleared up my wrongdoings. I hope most of them. Is that right or wrong? Did I get it wrong down here? No, those are right. Okay, cool. Let's put this colour to the side because that's not the right colour. You're the colour I wanted. Okay, start that again. So, care home day comes, we get them there. It's a bank holiday. So all of the main staff that I've been communicating with, they're not there because it's a bank holiday. So there's a bit of chaos going in. They assured me, you know, everything will be okay. You can tag all the clothes. When their clothes go through, the wearing goes through the wash, we'll then tag those as well. They assured me that there were people who had the exact same hearing aids as my mum, so there wouldn't be an issue with those of changing them, even though I had all the parts. I was about to sit down and show them how it was done, and they were like, no, it's fine. So I made sure I also included an email saying about the clean instructions on these hearing aids because of these constant ear infections my mother has. So immediately on the second day, Mum starts complaining, and her behaviour then it escalates, and it's mostly over the cigarettes. My dad at this point doesn't really care about cigarettes. I think he'd actually probably stop smoking if it wasn't for her at this point. But she's obsessed about the cigarettes. They won't let me hold on to the lighter. They keep taking everything away. And then just the complaints over shoes. My shoes aren't any good. We just bought her new shoes. I was like, I haven't got my clothes, and they're not doing the medications, and no one's talking to us, and they don't clean my ears, and they don't do the laundry. The laundry's never come back. I don't have enough nighties. I haven't got this. I haven't got that. I can't get my Kindle to work. I was like, put it on the charger. No, I can't do it. I was like, well, ask someone to help you put your Kindle on the charger. And it's like, no. My brother went there, put the Kindle on the charger. It was fine, nothing wrong with it. Next time I'm there, Mum's like, oh, the Kindle's not working, it's broken. Did you put it on the charge? I was like, no, the charger's broken. Then I put it on charge, and it charged it, and then it worked. And it seemed almost like any excuse to almost try and get me back with, you have to come do my hearing aids. You have to come and have a look at my hearing aids. They're not doing it. And at that point, you know, I'd been given reassurances, although there were issues as well that are happening where people weren't communicating with me. The home wasn't communicating well. I told them I was taking her to a cardiology appointment, which was like 2 days after admission, and please have her ready, take her lunch order and everything before she leaves. And I got there with plenty of time to spare, and she's not even ready. She's fast asleep. She didn't know she had an appointment. No one had told her. No one had got her ready. No one had taken her lunch order. So even though I'd turned up with way amounts of time to spare, we ended up being 5 minutes late to the appointment, at which point, you know, she has this meltdown in front of the cardiology team and insists, I've got to go home. You've got to let me go home. Why are you doing this to me? You've got to send me home. And it's like, well, no, Dad can't go home. He failed the capacity assessment. Not that it was the social services one, it was the mental health one, but still. He can't go home. Do you want to go home by yourself in that big house with a carer? And then she was like, oh no. She didn't want to go at that point. But, you know, the cardiologist people kept telling her, you've got to stay still so we can run this test. You've got to stay still. And she just wouldn't until I had to yell at her and say, sit still. At which point she then complied. But the behaviour then escalated. It got worse and worse. She then ended up attacking my sister-in-law with her walker. And again, about cigarettes, not giving her cigarettes, not letting her smoke, except they were taking photographs of every time they were giving them cigarettes as well. It's just there wasn't enough caring staff to keep up with the demand of their chain smoking, and they're not allowed to hold on to the lighters. So that was what was causing the issue there, and it was just causing mass amounts of upset to Mum. In addition, because she was complaining so much about cigarettes, I ended up just taking a step back and also ignoring the small amount of complaints that were popping in here and there about, you know, the care happening, because at the moment it's like she is just acting completely out of control. I can't deal with this. You're at summer camp, deal with it, was almost where I'd gotten to, whereas I needed that break and I wasn't getting it. But it ended up, I had to make multiple, looking back on it now, it's actually crazy. I've been had to keep a record of the cock-ups that have been happening. So it actually turned out that in the 33 days that they were there when they first moved in, I had to call the home 14 of those days, multiple times in the same day. And I was there at least 5 times in person and was doing multiple emails to the care home just in the first month they were there. Because of Mum's behaviour, the kicking off. She then had a fall in the home when she made such a fuss that they then took her to the hospital overnight and left her there by herself, at which point they then diagnosed, because they thought maybe she'd cracked her ribs because she was making such a fuss, but it turns out actually she had the beginning of pneumonia, which only 3 days earlier I had said to them, or 4 days earlier I'd said, I think Mum's got a chest infection, please can you get the GP to have a look at her and check her. GPs came in, checked her, said she was fine. 2 days later she'd had that fall, gone in for x-ray, they found pneumonia, which also explained why she'd been kicking off so badly, and the behaviour was making her a bit loopy from the infection, which is why she attacked my sister-in-law. So more of that kind of went on. She was still upset, still kicking off. I eventually then got to see in person what was causing this, which was one of the carers. It was a young boy who they then did tell us, because we pretty much assumed and guessed correctly, this boy was autistic and had ADHD. And of course, just when you're dealing with Alzheimer's patients, you need to have the constant, the happy front, the smiley face, the gentle encouragement. This boy was snatching and grabbing the cigarettes and the lighters out of her hands, being very abrupt. And basically there was a massive personality clash that had gone on that was causing this outrageous behaviour. So, you know, I saw for myself, so did the other carers at the time, because when this boy came into view, because we first started saying to her when she was having this meltdown, which boy is causing you the upset? Which boy is upsetting you? And she couldn't say who it was. First it was like a John. It's like, we don't have a John. It's like, Joe, we don't have a Joe. Then the boy walked out in front of us and she was like, that's him, that's the one. If he comes near me again, I'll throttle him, keep him away from me. So at that point, of course, they had to intervene and do something, and I also made a formal complaint against this boy, and we went from there. We've quickly switched over to my iPhone because I ran out of battery on my iPad. So I had to make a formal complaint about this boy. As I was leaving, I actually spoke to another a relative of another resident there, and I'd asked, you know, have you had any problems with the care, blah blah blah, and she said, yeah, who are you having trouble with? And I said, this boy, and she said, yeah. I mean, I've made a complaint about this boy as well. That was the point where I went back in and made the formal complaint, because I was like, if this is happening to more than one person, yeah, we've got to see how it goes. That has all now settled down and resolved. He did end up on annual leave, being forced on annual leave. But he is back now, and they forced him to sit down and apologise to my mum and everything, and she apologised back for being so mean to him. So that bit seems to be now sorted. What was annoying, because it was that bank holiday when we admitted them, they didn't tell us that they weren't allowed to take any open medications. So all of my mum's ear treatment stuff was, you know, thrown away, with none of us being notified about it. So none of the treatment for her ear, constant ear infections and the eczema and everything, none of that was being done for 2 weeks. So I also were having trouble with the hearing aids, and I sat down and I showed the head carer in charge at the time, you know, this is exactly how you change them. At which point, you know, she starts leaning on my legs, which, because I've got severe issues, I've also got allodynia, which means I bruise at really the lightest touch, This was like massively problematic, and I said, please don't lean on me, I've got health issues. At which point she just immediately went into talking about her own a car accident she'd been in and her issues, and I was like, I don't really care, I just want to focus on these hearing aids right now. I didn't say that, obviously, I was polite, but at the same time she then drops the bud for the hearing aid on the floor, puts it back on the device and gives it straight back to mum to put in her ear. And I'm like, no, you've got to anti-bac wipe that and clean it, because you're going to cause more ear infections. And I was just like shocked at that point. So I made a complaint against her as well about the hearing aids. The hearing aid thing escalated. So it got to the point where I was actually receiving phone calls from the care staff at the nursing home at the middle of the night, and they said, can you come in, because we can't figure out how to clean the hearing aids. And I was like, no, you know, it's like 8:30 at night, I'm not going all the way over to the care home for hearing aids. So I explained to her what to do over the phone, and I assumed, okay, clearly it's been done. When I went in to check, not only had it not been done, the buds were filthy, the wax guards were completely filled with wax, and it had even destroyed the wires of the hearing aids. So because these are private hearing aids, those wires are £120 for the pair of them. And it's like they've never had both wires fail simultaneously like this ever since we had those brand new hearing aids. Once at the very beginning, when we didn't know about mum's ear infections, that's when the first wire got clogged and I learned how to change them. But I was always so vigilant multiple times a week that I changed and cleaned those hearing aids so that, you know, we wouldn't ever have to try and get replacement parts. In addition, they'd also been throwing out the reusable earbuds instead of changing them. Those are £14 per packet, and they were throwing them straight in the bin. You should never need to have to replace them unless the plastic actually breaks, the little silicone-y stuff. So a lot of damage was done to the hearing aids. I was on my last legs in tears about it, broke down in front of the home on multiple occasions, because at this point as well, when I'd taken mum for her cardiology appointment, I was getting phone calls from the nursing home while I was at the hospital with my mother about my father. It's like they knew I'd taken her because they'd seen me leave only 30 minutes before, and I was getting phone calls about my father. And then they waited till I got back in with mum and told me, right, they were explaining about where they're going to get his bloods done, his next sort of bloods. And then I was like, because they were like really explaining the directions of where to get there, and I was like, are you expecting me to take him? He was like, yes, it is the responsibility of the relatives to take patients to their medical appointments. And I was like, well, we can't keep them in this nursing home then, because I was told this wasn't an issue before we even moved them in, because what on earth is the point if I'm still doing all of the medical? I can't do it. So I basically had a meltdown in front of the dining room, in front of all the residents. Well, I tried not to, and then, you know, I went out of the dining room to leave everyone to it, so I didn't affect anyone. And then they were like, when I said that, you know, we'd agreed to this before admission, they were like, oh, well, if you agreed to it for admission, don't worry then, but it's an extra charge. And I'm like, I don't care that it's an extra charge. I cannot do it myself. So that was the first massive upset, because they clearly no one had been told anything about my parents. You know, I was getting people asking me to fill out forms that I'd already filled out 2 weeks earlier. I was like, but I've already done this. You guys even had a laptop out at my house and were logging all of this stuff as I was telling you about it. So they never seemed to know the left from the right. The clothes that my father was wearing when he was admitted on the 4th never got tagged when they went through the laundry. They haven't returned. He doesn't have that many clothes anyway. I've been trying to find identical ones on eBay so that it doesn't confuse him with the change of clothes when he's like, where's my jumper? Because all of the fancy outfits and the cashmere and everything, none of those are suitable for a home, because everything goes straight into the tumble dryer, which will destroy cashmere jumpers. So he was very lacking on jumpers anyway, and they went and lost his jumpers, his shirt, the brand new pair of jeans that I got him. Complete waste of money. I'd only bought those jeans a week or two before the move-in day, so he'd have extra. and they lost them along with his jumper. So the medications that got thrown away for Mum's ears, they didn't replace them because the ENT department had never formally written it all down in the GP letters. There was no like paper trail of any of these ear infections or what to do. The GPs couldn't re-prescribe the medication. It became a whole big thing, and we didn't find this out for weeks because I'd asked them. We had an ENT appointment coming. My sister-in-law had said she was going to take my mum. Last minute she was like, I don't think I can manage your mum by myself, can you come with me? And of course it was just a kind of chaos with mum and her behaviour and the ENT department, and she had a go at the ENT specialist. Yeah, it was a bit of a palaver, and I'd specified in the email to the care home, please can you put these drops in her ear the day before the appointment so we can loosen up the wax for suctioning, because she has to have her ears suctioned every 6 weeks. You're supposed to not do it more than once every 6 months because of the damage that it can cause to the eardrum if you're not careful. So every 4 to 6 weeks Mum has to get her ears suctioned, and yeah, so she knew the specialist really well, but that didn't stop her from getting really nasty with him as well. And then we discovered afterwards that because the ENT specialist had said, go back on these drops that you were put on a few weeks ago. And I was like, that's fine, because I've given the repeat prescription form to the care home already. It should not be a problem. Another week goes by and we try and chase up and say, how's the medicated ear treatment going for my mother? And they haven't done any of it because they don't have any of the medications. They've all been thrown away. And it's complete chaos. It's like, I even showed them where the pink form was because I knew what folder they put it in the office. I was like, you've got it in that folder right there. I'm looking at it. There is the prescription form. Renew it. So all in all, that has been a pretty awful experience. So when my dad first went in there, he was actually fantastic. I'd never seen him so bright, chirpy, interactive in my years. It was amazing seeing the transformation on him. But Mum's mood has pulled him down with her, so now he's back to we're doomed. For a while he was singing happy songs for the first time in years rather than sad ones. But they have now got to the point where it is basically like having teenagers who think they can look after themselves, really can't, and find farts really, really funny now. Crude humour goes down really well with them. But every time I go there, every time I see my mum, I'm having to run around and check with the nursing home staff. So we ran out of storage on my phone as well, so it's going well, this whip and chat, which is also probably going to be the longest whip and chat in history. So where we stand now is basically my mum and dad don't want to be there. My mum sends us comments calling us sadistic. Why are you doing this to us? I want to go home. We're going to walk out of here. We're going to break out. I'm going to hit somebody. I'm going to smash something. This has been now very ongoing the whole time, which has been exhausting since they've been in there. And actually led to the escape attempt that happened just this weekend gone past when I went in to visit them. And the care home said, yeah, they got out this morning. So what had happened was they'd opened the front doors to let out a family member, and my parents had then snuck out through the open door and like kind of legged it out the door. So the receptionist had to call for backup from the care team to coax them back inside, which they managed to with lots of hugs from Mum. It seems more like Dad was just sort of following her, which is what he started doing before this anyway, following her around and getting agitated if she was out of sight. So they'd legged it out the door, hadn't got very far, had been coaxed back in, and the care home was just making me aware that it had happened. But apparently it happens quite a lot and people break out, and yeah, fun times. Apparently somebody smashed that door that they escaped from like a few years ago. So they've seen it all. But I think it's definitely been a wake-up call for my half-brother and his wife to see the sides that my parents were keeping hidden from them. Because at the start I was very confused, like, how are people not seeing what's happening? I just could not understand it. But then seeing them when we went to look at nursing homes, because my brother just had not seen how bad things were at all. But I saw why when we all went to visit the nursing home together before I admitted them, and they were putting up such a convincing front around my brother. I was like, wow, it's almost like they're normal. They are managing to mask it so well, just for short periods of time. And I was like, well, that's clearly that's what's been happening then, because I was the one that was at home for 36 years before I moved out. You know, I've been the closest one to see these changes as they're happening, but people also haven't been really believing me on it, to the point where I'd gotten to the stage of I did not trust myself anymore. I wasn't sure what I was doing was right or wrong. I wasn't sure if I was imagining how bad things were. So it was the beginning of January where I went to Aidan and I said, you know, is this really as bad as I feel it is? Because, you know, all I'm doing is complaining about this. And he was like, no, this is bad. This is taking up all of our weekends. We don't have any time for ourselves anymore. It's dominating our lives. And it was like, that was the kick I needed to start the care home search. So as it stands now, because they're wanting to leave and we don't feel they have the mental capacity to, they won't obviously agree to let us sell the house to fund for the nursing home at this stage, because they want to go back home. Because when they escaped and the carers asked, where are you going, they both said, we're going back home. So what's happened with, I've been in contact with so many different departments. So it was the social prescriber recommended that I talk to adult social care, because first I talked to the community matrons to say, you know, what happened with this mental capacity assessment. The community matrons were supposed to be following up with us 2 weeks after the move to the care home, and that follow-up never happened. The case file on it seemed to have been closed. There's no departments attached to it. They said that because of my mother's behaviour, they were going to reopen my mother's case file to try and get this mental capacity assessment. That never seemed to happen. So the social prescriber told me to contact adult social care. Adult social care didn't have a clue because there was nothing on the system. Also, it's showing that the case file was closed in 2025, which is impossible because we were seeing the community matrons in most of this year in 2026. So something's gone awry on the system for no department heads to even be attached to their file. They weren't even sure what to do. Said they were going to ring me back and then didn't. Fortunately, we've been in touch with the Admiral nurses, which they have been absolutely fantastic, actually. It's kind of sad that I wasn't introduced to them earlier when I was struggling, because they're actually better than any trained counsellor at this point, because they've seen it all, they've lived it, they know exactly how I'm feeling. So it's finally nice to get some understanding and recognition. I first spoke to them at the beginning of the year when I was really debating whether or not the care home move was the right thing at that point, and it was very helpful being able to talk to people who really understood all the aspects of it. So anyway, I spoke to our Admiral nurse, who was wonderful, and she went and gave social services a big kick up the bum, and they actually then rang me back I think it was the following day, which was really nice, saying that they've been referred to the higher ups. We're going to try and get this mental capacity assessment done hopefully in the next few weeks for both your parents, because the Admiral nurse has marked it as urgent. So yeah, so that's where we're standing at the moment. If once social services do this assessment, they're going to liaise with the home. They've already taken my insights of it, because what was happening with the cooking, we were getting the Meals on Wheels for them for lunch, and then Mum was doing sandwiches, as in sending the carers down to buy them sandwiches that they would then eat for dinner that night. Because Dad wasn't eating everything, she wasn't throwing the food away, she was storing it uncovered, serving it up the next day, and it looked rotten as anything. Like Scotch eggs that were all dried out and disgusting, and sandwiches that really looked like they were on their last legs. I wouldn't have touched them. But that's the food, and you know, going through the fridge and, you know, the mould and sell-by dates and throwing this stuff away and everything. I don't think there's any chance that she will pass a mental capacity assessment, just because of how things had progressed at home. And I spoke to this guy at social services, and I made them aware of all the things that were happening with the bathing and not washing, and Mum refusing to wash or shower while the carers were there. She would insist on getting up early, doing it before they even turned up, even though there was a major safety hazard, because the shower was not very suitable for someone with mobility issues, because there's multiple steps just to get into it, and it was tiny. And I'd started helping her shower in those last few months as well, because she just refused to do it with the carer that were coming in. So I'll be like, okay, you guys gotta do it now, and I'll be here and I'll help you with your bra and all that. But again, because I'd been living with it for so long, I was sort of part of this dysfunctional family where you just kept on, you keep going, you keep battling on, you keep pushing through. With Alzheimer's, you hit a wall with that, because the recognition is lost, the understanding is lost, the capacity to understand time and places, people, faces. Simple tasks like buttoning up clothes or doing up the fly on your jeans, and these tasks become just almost daunting and impossible for Alzheimer's patients. I know Dad got very, even though he didn't remember having the fall in the bath, he became very cautious about wanting a bath at all at that point, so which made the carer's job even harder to encourage him after that as well. So yeah, in all there was, it really creeps up on you. So that's where we're standing at the moment. I'm now sort of in limbo, basically waiting for this mental capacity assessment. I'm still having to, you know, be at my parents' house and stay there once a month, so that, you know, the house insurance is still valid and all of that, which is a drain in itself, and, you know, the gardener and the maintenance, and I've got all the water and everything turned off. The windows are as locked as they can be, but they're falling. They've shot. The windows completely shot. The double glazing's gone. The windows at the front of the house are the same that were there 30 years ago when we bought the house, which is the 30th anniversary in this month, June, 30th anniversary of buying that house. And it's just an echo of ghosts and run down chaos. It's shabby. The curtains are worn through, the windows are shut, the showers are on their last legs, the plumbing is basically atrocious. All 3 sheds are falling down. The patio is a nightmare death trap. My mum couldn't even walk on it because she was too frail to walk on it. And that house is massive. They refused to downsize. They refused to take the steps that were needed to make them able to be at home for longer, because they just never wanted to do the maintenance on properties. And now, 30 years later, I'm having to reap the benefits of property neglect, effectively, which has been an awful lot. And that's on top of the scammers that we had. We had people calling up to be Dad's doctor, who convinced him that he needed to buy his medication and to give the debit card details over the phone. He did manage to catch himself on that one, and we rang the bank straight away to cancel that debit card. We had credit card fraud as well, where the information had been leaked and we were getting charges on his bank statement. It's like, well, we didn't order anything from Amazon in London. Dad doesn't even have an Amazon account. How is this even happening? And then we had the scammers that convinced Mum that the cherry tree on the front of the drive was dead. I'd literally 2 weeks earlier got it pruned for several £100s. It wasn't dead. They cut it all down and took all the logs away and charged her £300 for the privilege. Then came back a few days later insisting that the beams on her roof were exposed, and it had to get someone up there straight away to deal with this, because all your beams are exposed and it's going to cost £500 to replace it. Mum was fortunately smart enough to contact me at that point. I got my builder around, who looked he even went up the top of the road to look down the hill at it and went, there are no beams exposed whatsoever. Whatever photographs they showed you were of someone else's property, because there's nothing wrong with your roof. So it was just awful how it felt like as soon as you become vulnerable, you are targeted, and it's impossible to keep people safe. I mean, I even before I'd moved out, I was intercepting all phone calls when I was there. As soon as the phone rang, I went downstairs, I intercepted the call. And because often Dad had started talking to these, we can do double glazing for you, and you've got a problem with your Microsoft account. He was starting to chat to these people on the phone, not realising that they're scammers. So in hindsight is a wonderful thing. There's a lot of things I could have done differently had I not been in so much denial myself about how bad things were going, and if I could have recognised how bad things were going. Like, I should have got the home phone number diverted to mine earlier, but in a lot of cases I was limited on what I could do due to my parents refusing to have support from anyone else rather than me. So now we're waiting on the social services and the mental capacity assessment, and then once that's in place, I can finally get the house on the ball and up for sale. So we've already had estate agents around to quote for it. I know which one I want to go with. It's all ready pretty much. I just need to have the go ahead so I can finally start clearing that place, because again, my health is so affected by temperature that if not only are we going to be short on cash if we don't get this house sold this year, we're going to then hit the time of the year where I physically cannot function through the colder months of it. I have to basically hibernate. So I really want to get that house moving, and then finally I can go back to being literally just a daughter, not a full-time carer for two parents who can't even recognise now the amount that I do for them, which is kind of heartbreaking in itself, because they were always so involved with my life. Like, my mother never would always open all my medical letters as soon as they came in the house, even in my late 20s and after many blow-ups about it. All my letters were always opened, things like that. So it's difficult to lose what they are, what they were and what they are now. It's the special kind of grief, and I can't remember the name of it, where you prolonged having to watch someone you love slowly fade away to being irrecognisable. After my parents escaped from the nursing home, my father turned around and was telling everyone that his daughter, me, didn't have lasting power of attorney, and I was taking all of their money. So I was already prepared for stuff like that to come anyway, because I'd read about it in the forums, that when people are losing their mind, the familiar surroundings, people they know, the people that they do remember then become targets for suspicion, because their minds are trying to fill in the gaps, and because you're someone that's trusted, you end up in the firing line of it. So it has to be you, because you're the only person that feels familiar who could be responsible, sort of thing. That's where the mind ends up going when you get to that stage. So I'm hoping that things will settle down. After my absolute crying meltdown over the damaged hearing aids at the nursing home, they do have now, after I spoke to the head lady, Christina, who just had a baby, so she'd been away for quite a while. But she was actually deaf herself and has the exact same hearing aids, and then guaranteed we will make sure these are dealt with 3 times a day, which I just thought that was kind of excessive. But when I checked this weekend just gone, hearing aids were absolutely immaculate. Mum complained, said she couldn't hear. I literally took the earbuds off to have a look to make sure it was all clean. It was all clean, put it back together, put her in her ears. I had done nothing, and she was like, oh, they're working so much better now. No, Mum, they're exactly the same. The carers have been doing them. Like, no, they never come. They never come and look at my ears. They never clean them. And it's like, well, clearly they have, because this is really good. After weeks of battling about it, they're finally doing it. So I'm impressed. Good. So that's at least one battle. We're now on top of the medications for the ears. We managed to get all the medications that got thrown away replaced. But it was just a very rocky rocky few weeks, and it has literally in the last couple of weeks just finally been able to have a bit of a breather, and actually for the first time the anxiety is starting to settle down a bit. I don't feel quite as much like I've got that massive brick on my chest that was there solidly for a whole year, like this weight pushing down on my chest that made it hard to breathe. But that lifted. It still twinges every now and again when I've got admin tasks and stuff, but I think emotionally I did hit such a low point. I kind of hit rock bottom, and I've shut off kind of caring about other people so much, apart from like the immediate like what's going on in my house with my husband and my stepdaughter. Everything else now is sort of like being dampened by my own emotions. I think that's part of like survival mode when you get to that stage where you literally just stop feeling to the same extent. Because a few weeks ago, if I tried to record this video, most of it would have been tears, whereas now I'm feeling a bit more stable in myself to be able to make the next steps. But that is one thing that is never mentioned, and I do want to say, if you have made it to the ending part of this video, and if you're caring for someone with Alzheimer's and you're struggling, I understand. I understand more than you can imagine of that weight that's on you right now. And even if you're feeling that you're not doing an okay job, or you could be doing better, trust me, you are doing a wonderful job. You're doing more than what most people do, and you're doing it out of love. And that takes a strength and a courage all on its own to be able to push through not only the heartache of watching someone you love deteriorate, but the emotional strain of being, you know, their walking aid, their advocate, their medical admin assistant, their maintenance provider, their food supplier, their meal planner, their activity organizer, you know, their gardener, organizer, carer. It's an awful lot, and it creeps up on you without you even realizing it. So if you are feeling down and low and like it will never end, trust me, you are doing a wonderful job, and you're holding it together as best you can. And I'd love to say it might get easier. I don't know yet. I'm still partway through this journey of myself. I don't know how it will play out. I'm hoping that maybe there'll be a light at the end of the tunnel, and I can improve my own health situation and focus on myself a little bit more to get me in a better place where I can be more for my parents. And I know they're not happy, and I have promised that if, you know, give it a few months, get this cardiac pacemaker surgery out of the way, and if you really are unhappy at that point, I will consider moving you to actually the very, very first home that I viewed, which I had discounted because it was too run down and shabby, and I didn't think they'd be happy there. But in hindsight, because of the care element, they have more carers per resident than any of these other more named care homes. The care quality is better. They have resident cats, they've got a fish pond, they've got chickens and rabbits. You know, they've got more going for them, but the inside of it is a converted house. It's really run down, which is why it got poo-pooed. But that might be the alternative if the care levels don't improve. But again, I need to focus on myself a bit before we can even think about next steps of where we go. But making that decision to get them into the home, there is no doubt that was the right thing to do, because I wasn't going to be able to survive it any longer, and then they would have been completely on their own. I just really wish there had been more discussion about the caring side of it, more acknowledgement, understanding, more preparation for what was going to come. But at the same time, you can understand why the NHS refuses to do something like that, because they actually don't have any or enough resources to allocate to actually deal with the problem. So if you don't know that this is a thing that could happen, you're more likely to push through out of determination and love and obligation than to actually listen to what your own body's telling you, which is to stop. You need more input, more professional help to combat it. And the sad thing is that when you get so run down with carer burnout, is you cannot see what steps you need to take. All you can do is live day to day with the next crisis in a very energy depleted state. So I'm not sure if there's any advice I can offer to people who are struggling in this situation at the moment, other than, I don't know. Hopefully you'll spot the signs of burnout quicker than I did, and possibly realise that it is a very real problem that needs help, and there isn't a lot of that out there that I've come across. Although now that I've had, there are a few support groups I've been told about, which maybe once I've got a bit of energy back might be worth having a look at and seeing how we go from there. Because I'd love to get to the stage where I can just go and join in with the care home activities and be like, hi mum, what are we doing today then? But rather than the dread. Although since the escape attempt, I've taken like this new policy, because I'd tried to take a step back, and also because I'd been advised to take a step back from actually the care home staff. They usually say, they actually specifically said, do not come in all that often for the first 6 weeks, because otherwise you'll end up becoming an unpaid carer working here, because they won't be able to rely on anyone else. They'll just want to deal with you. And even though I wasn't going in all the time, that's still what was happening, because mum was texting me every day to do the hearing aids and this and that and whatever. So I've been trying this new thing where I've been texting my mum every morning to tell her nice things, and so far so good. That seemed to actually be keeping her calm, hearing from me every morning. So fingers crossed we might be onto a strategy here. So a break is needed, and then hopefully we can just build some fun memories again for whatever they've got left. So following the kind of the time scale, my dad's kind of following it quite rigidly, actually, when you look at like the stages and how many years it takes to be in each stage of dementia. So if you're going by statistics, we're looking at he's maybe 4 years, perhaps till we get 4 to 6 years before we get to like the end. But with the way mum is declining, I wouldn't be surprised if she actually ends up passing sooner, even though she got her diagnosis later in life, because she's actually a lot older than my dad as well. There's a 9 years age gap between them. That's why it was a shock when Dad got diagnosed in his 60s. He's 71 in a week or so. 4th of July is his birthday. So anyway, I think I've been chatting your ears off for an eternity. If you're still at the end, watching all the way to the end, then wow, you have my respect for putting up with that long explanation of basically my life story and currently what my life has literally revolved around exclusively for the last year. So I think this is the first bit of diamond painting I've done now in 365 days or so. Maybe or maybe not, I'll get back into it, who knows. But thank you so much for listening to my story and letting me get it off my chest. I can put it onto file store for future, having all the timeline at least down of what's been happening, I guess, is a way so I can go, okay, it's down, put it aside, let's move on to the future from now and the next phase of what's to come. Whether or not regular YouTube videos will come back, I highly doubt it at this stage, but who knows, maybe I'll get enthusiasm again one day. Sorry, most of this has been talking and not actually very much diamond painting. I tended to lose track of what I was doing there. But thank you so much again. All my love to you if you are struggling to care for an elderly relative at this point. It is one of the hardest jobs you'll ever have to do, and you'll get very little thanks for it, which is the hard part. But the people of you who are out there who are doing it, who are soldiering through each and every day to care for people you love, you guys are superheroes. And with that, I will leave you to it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you at some point in the future with probably the next Alzheimer's update, I'd imagine. Thank you. Bye.